The ward lights died without warning. In the sudden blackness, automatic gunfire tore through the night, close, deliberate, lethal. A body hit the clinic floor with a wet thud, blood pooling beneath the doorframe. No scream, no chance to run. 23 wounded soldiers lay defenseless in their beds, and the only thing standing between them and execution was a woman they'd spent the last 6 hours calling just a nurse. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry out. She reached down, picked up the dead guard's rifle, and chambered around like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Outside, shadows moved with military precision. Inside, Mara Hale became something else entirely. Stick around until the very end of this story. Like this video, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled, and let me know what you think happens next. The morning had started quiet. Too quiet for a forward operating clinic barely 15 miles from hostile territory. Mara Hale moved between the beds at Coldwater Medical Station with the kind of efficiency that came from repetition, not training anyone bothered to ask about. She checked vitals, adjusted IV drips, made notes on clipboards that would probably be ignored by the next shift. The soldiers didn't look at her. Why would they? She was part of the furniture, disposable, forgettable, background noise in uniforms that actually mattered. The station itself was a converted warehouse on the edge of Granger Falls, a town so small it didn't warrant a dot on most maps. Chain-link fencing surrounded the perimeter. Guard towers stood at each corner, manned by contractors who rotated every 8 hours and rarely spoke to medical staff. Inside, the main ward held 30 beds, most of them occupied by soldiers awaiting airlift to proper facilities. Broken bones, shrapnel wounds, infections that wouldn't heal in the field. Nothing glamorous, nothing that made the news. Mara wore scrubs the color of faded moss, her hair pulled back in a tight bun that revealed a face people forgot 5 minutes after meeting her. 32 years old, average height, no jewelry, no makeup. She moved like someone who understood that being invisible was a survival skill. When doctors barked orders, she complied. When patients complained, she adjusted their pillows. When the supply officer shorted her requisitions for the 3rd week running, she said nothing and made do. The injured officer in bed 12 had been the worst. Captain Joel Renner, special operations shrapnel through his left thigh, and 3 cracked ribs from an IED that had killed 2 of his men. He'd been at Coldwater for 4 days, and he'd spent most of that time making it clear that he didn't appreciate being stuck in what he called a glorified tent with delusions of relevance. This morning, when Mara came to change his dressing, he didn't even let her touch the gauze before snapping. "You're doing it wrong." Mara paused, hands still gloved, tray of supplies balanced on the rolling cart beside his bed. "Sir?" "The wrapping. You're pulling it too tight. Did they teach you anything, or did you just walk in off the street?" She kept her voice level. "I'll adjust it." "You'll adjust it wrong. Just get someone else. Someone who knows what they're doing." The words landed like they were supposed to. Mara set the tray down, stripped off her gloves, and walked away without a word. Behind her, Renner muttered something to the soldier in the next bed, and they both laughed. She didn't turn around. She'd heard worse, from better people. By noon, the heat inside the ward had climbed to the point where the air felt thick enough to chew. The building's ventilation system wheezed and rattled, but didn't actually cool anything. Mara made her rounds, distributing medications, checking wound sites, answering the same question she'd answered yesterday and would answer again tomorrow. One of the younger soldiers, a private with a bandaged shoulder, asked her how long until the next evac flight. She told him what the scheduler had told her that morning, 72 hours, weather permitting. He swore under his breath and turned his face toward the wall. The senior medical officer, Dr. Vincent Pryor, swept through the ward around 1,400 hours with the kind of authority that came from never having been shot at. He was 50-something, graying at the temples, impeccably clean despite the dust that coated everything else in Coldwater. He stopped at the foot of Renner's bed, reviewed the chart, and frowned. "Nurse Hale." Mara looked up from the medication cabinet across the room. "Yes, doctor?" "Captain Renner's dressing wasn't changed this morning." "He requested someone else handle it, sir." Pryor's frown deepened. "I don't recall giving you permission to delegate your assignments." "I didn't delegate. You walked away from a patient. That's unacceptable." Mara opened her mouth, then closed it. There was no point. Pryor had already decided. He always did. Consider this a formal warning, Pryor continued, loud enough that half the ward could hear. Another incident like this, and you'll be reassigned to supply duty. We need medical staff who can follow instructions, not prima donnas who pick and choose their patients. He left before she could respond. Renner, from his bed, smirked. The private with the bandaged shoulder looked away. Mara returned to the medication cabinet, hands steady, face blank. She'd been a prima donna exactly once in her life, and it had cost her everything that mattered. She wasn't about to repeat the mistake. The afternoon bled into evening. Shadows stretched across the ward as the sun dropped toward the horizon. The guard rotations changed. New faces in the towers, same bored expressions. Mara finished her shift at 1800 hours and was halfway to the staff quarters when Pryor intercepted her outside the supply room. "Change of plans," he said, not looking up from the tablet in his hands. "Night shift called in sick. You're covering." Mara blinked. "I just worked 12 hours. And now you're working 12 more, unless you'd prefer I file that reassignment paperwork tonight instead of Monday." She didn't answer. Pryor took her silence as agreement and walked away, already moving on to the next problem that wasn't actually his problem. Mara stood in the corridor for a moment, exhaustion pulling at the edges of her vision, then turned and walked back toward the ward. The building felt different at night, quieter. The hum of medical equipment became more pronounced when there weren't voices to drown it out. Most of the soldiers were asleep or pretending to be. The overhead lights had been dimmed to half strength, casting everything in shades of gray. She made a slow circuit of the beds, checking monitors, adjusting blankets, making sure no one had pulled out an IV line in their sleep. Renner was awake, staring at the ceiling. When she approached, he didn't acknowledge her. She didn't push it. Some people needed to be angry at someone, and tonight she was convenient. At 21:40 hours, the perimeter alarm should have gone off. They didn't. Later, investigators would find the alarm system's main junction box cut cleanly through, the wires severed with precision that suggested someone who knew exactly what they were doing. But in the moment, there was no warning. Just the sudden crack of gunfire outside, sharp and close, followed by the heavy thump of someone hitting the ground. The ward lights flickered, once, twice, then died completely. In the darkness, someone screamed. Mara's hand went to the small flashlight clipped to her belt, muscle memory overriding the shock that should have frozen her in place. She clicked it on, the narrow beam cutting through the blackness. Around her, soldiers were struggling to sit up, fumbling for weapons that weren't there, calling out questions that no one could answer. More gunfire. Closer now. The sound of boots on gravel, running, coordinated. The main entrance to the ward was a set of double doors at the north end of the building, reinforced but not designed to stop a determined assault. Mara moved toward them, flashlight in one hand, the other reaching for the radio clipped to her belt. She keyed the mic. "Security, this is medical. We have hostile contact at the north perimeter. Request immediate..." The radio hissed static, dead air. Someone had jammed communications. The doors exploded inward. Not from an explosive, just raw force, 3 men in black tactical gear hitting them simultaneously. The first one through the threshold carried an automatic rifle, night vision goggles pushed up on his helmet. He swept the room, found Mara standing 10 feet away with a flashlight, and dismissed her instantly. His weapon tracked past her toward the beds. Mara moved. She didn't think about it, didn't calculate odds or consider alternatives. Her body remembered what her conscious mind had spent 2 years trying to forget. She closed the distance in 3 strides, left hand slamming the rifle barrel up and away, right hand driving into the man's throat with enough force to collapse his windpipe. He went down choking, and she caught the rifle as it fell, spinning to bring it up just as the second attacker cleared the doorway. 2 shots. Center mass. He dropped. The third man hesitated, and that hesitation killed him. Mara put a round through his chest before he could raise his weapon, then another for certainty. The entire sequence took less than 5 seconds. Silence crashed back into the ward. Someone was whimpering. Someone else was praying. Mara stood in the doorway, rifle still raised, scanning for additional targets. Her hands weren't shaking. They should have been. Normal people's hands shook after killing 3 men in 5 seconds. But Mara Hale had stopped being normal a long time ago. Behind her, Captain Renner's voice cut through the shock. "What the hell just happened?" Mara didn't turn around. Stay in your beds. Don't move unless I tell you to. Who the hell are you? Right now, I'm the person keeping you alive. More gunfire erupted outside, sustained bursts that suggested the guard towers were under attack. Mara moved back from the doorway, using the wall for cover, eyes adjusting to the darkness beyond her flashlight's beam. The three bodies at the entrance weren't random looters. Their gear was too good. Military-grade weapons, coordinated entry tactics, communication earpieces that were still crackling with voices speaking a language she recognized but couldn't place in the moment's chaos. This wasn't a raid. It was an execution squad. The question was, who were they here to execute? Mara crouched beside the first man she'd killed, the one with the collapsed windpipe. He was still alive, barely, struggling to breathe through a ruined airway. She pulled the night vision goggles off his helmet and slipped them on. The world turned green and sharp. She could see the compound now, guard towers burning, bodies scattered across the gravel, more tactical teams moving in formation toward the medical building. 12, maybe 15 hostiles, all armed, all professional. She turned back to the ward. In the green glow of night vision, the soldiers looked like ghosts. Renner had managed to drag himself upright, ribs screaming, hand pressed against his wounded thigh. He was staring at her like she'd grown a second head. "You're not a nurse," he said. Mara pulled a spare magazine from the dead man's vest. "Not tonight." "Who trained you?" "People who don't exist anymore." She moved to the windows along the east wall, keeping low. Through the night vision, she could see the tactical teams regrouping. They weren't storming the building. They were setting up a perimeter, trapping everyone inside. One of the younger soldiers, the private with the bandaged shoulder, called out from his bed. "Are we going to die?" Mara looked at him. 19, maybe 20 years old, terrified. She could lie to him, tell him everything would be fine, that help was coming, that they just needed to stay calm and wait for rescue. But she'd never been good at lying. "Not if you do exactly what I say," she told him. "Can you walk?" He nodded. "Then get up. I need you to help the ones who can't." Renner was still staring at her. "What's the play here? We're surrounded, communications are down, and we have 23 wounded soldiers who can barely stand." "There is no play." Mara ejected the magazine from the rifle, checked the round count, slammed it back home. "There's always a play. It just depends on how much you're willing to lose." She moved toward the back of the ward where a storage closet held supplies that were supposed to last the month. She knew what was in there. She'd inventoried it herself 3 days ago. Medical equipment, sterile packaging, cleaning supplies, and one thing that shouldn't have been there at all. She opened the closet, pushed aside boxes of gauze and antiseptic, and found the duffel bag she'd hidden beneath a shelf of IV solutions. Inside, body armor, 2 additional magazines, a combat knife, and a satellite phone with a battery that should still hold a charge. Renner had followed her, limping, using the wall for support. He looked at the bag, then at her. "You knew this was coming." "I knew something was coming. I didn't know when." "Who are you?" Mara pulled the body armor over her scrubs, secured the straps. Someone they should have left alone. She powered on the satellite phone. It took 15 seconds to acquire a signal, 15 seconds where she stood perfectly still, listening to the gunfire outside intensify, tracking the tactical team's movements through sound alone. The phone beeped. Signal locked. She dialed a number from memory. It rang twice. A voice answered. Male, flat. No identification. Verification code. Mara spoke 6 words, random to anyone listening, specific enough to trigger alarms in 3 different government databases. The voice on the other end changed. Still flat, but with an edge now. Recognition. Hail, you're supposed to be dead. I got better. I need an immediate air response at these coordinates. Hostile force, 15+ combatants, military-grade equipment. Civilians in danger. Your status? Compromised. They're here for me. A pause. Then, air support inbound. ETA 22 minutes. Can you hold? Mara looked at the ward, at the soldiers who couldn't walk, at the windows where muzzle flashes were getting closer. I don't have a choice. She ended the call, pulled the armor tight, and turned back to Renner. We have 22 minutes. I need every man who can hold a weapon ready to hold a weapon. Everyone else gets moved to the basement level. There is no basement level. Mara smiled. It wasn't a reassuring expression. Yes, she said. There is. She moved to the southwest corner of the ward, where a supply cart sat against what looked like a solid concrete wall. Renner followed, favoring his injured leg, confusion written across his face. Mara shoved the cart aside with one hand, revealing scuff marks on the floor. Recent ones, deliberate patterns that suggested repeated movement. She knelt, fingers finding the barely visible seam in the concrete, and pressed hard on a section that gave slightly under pressure. A click. Then a grinding sound as a section of wall swung inward, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. Renner stared. How long has that been there? 6 weeks. I installed it myself during night shifts. Mara pulled a chemical light stick from her pocket, cracked it, and tossed it down the stairs. Green light bloomed in the darkness below. When I came to Coldwater, I did my homework. This building used to be a munitions depot in the 50s. The basement was sealed off during renovations, but the original structure's still intact. 30 feet of reinforced concrete between here and there. And you just happen to know that? I make it a habit to know my exits. She turned to face the ward, raising her voice. Anyone who can't walk gets carried down now. Anyone who can walk helps carry. We have 90 seconds before they realize we're not where they expect us to be. The soldiers moved, some faster than others. Fear was a powerful motivator when bullets were involved. The private with the bandaged shoulder, his name was Collins, Mara remembered now, helped a man with a broken ankle toward the hidden entrance. 2 others dragged a soldier on a stretcher, the man unconscious from pain medication, blissfully unaware that his odds of survival had just improved marginally. Renner grabbed Mara's arm. You're not coming down with us. No. That's suicide. That's the job. She pulled free, moving back toward the main entrance where the 3 bodies lay cooling. They came here for someone specific. If I'm down there with you, they'll find a way in. If I'm up here, they'll focus on me. And then what? You take on 15 trained killers by yourself? Mara knelt beside the second body, stripping ammunition and a tactical radio from the vest. 14. I already got 3. You're out of your mind. She looked up at him. In the green glow of the night vision goggles, her eyes were flat, emotionless. Probably, but I'm also the only thing standing between those men and a basement full of wounded soldiers who can't defend themselves. So unless you've got a better plan in the next 30 seconds, I suggest you get down those stairs and seal the entrance behind you. Outside, the gunfire had stopped. That was worse than the noise. Silence meant they were repositioning, planning their next move. Mara could hear orders being shouted in that language she still couldn't place. Slavic, maybe Russian, hard to tell with the accent distortion from the radio. The last of the mobile soldiers disappeared down the stairs. Renner stood at the entrance, one hand on the hidden door, looking back at her. What's your real name? He asked. You already know it. I know the name on your badge. I'm asking who you were before you became a nurse no one respects. Mara stood, slinging the captured rifle across her back, the tactical radio clipped to her belt. Someone who got a lot of people killed because she wasn't good enough when it mattered. Someone who's been trying to be invisible ever since. Doesn't look very invisible to me. Yeah, well, some days you don't get what you want. She moved toward him, placed one hand on his chest, and shoved him backward through the entrance. Seal it. Don't open it until you hear air support or my voice. No one else's. She slammed the hidden door shut before he could respond. The mechanism locked with a heavy thud. Mara dragged the supply cart back into position, scattering medical supplies across the floor to make it look like panicked evacuation rather than organized retreat. She grabbed 2 more chemical light sticks, cracked them, and tossed them toward opposite ends of the ward. Green light bounced off empty beds and overturned equipment. From her position near the entrance, she could see through the night vision goggles as the tactical teams completed their perimeter. They'd set up overlapping fields of fire on all exits. Professional work. Whoever had planned this knew what they were doing. The tactical radio on her belt crackled. A voice spoke in accented English. Medical staff, we know you can hear this. Send out the woman called Mara Hale, and the rest of you walk away. You have 60 seconds to comply. Mara smiled in the darkness. So that answered one question. She keyed the radio. You came a long way to get one retired operator. Must be a slow year for contract work. Pause. Then, retired implies you completed your service. Our information says you ran, left your team to die in Kandahar province. That doesn't earn retirement. That earns a bullet. The words hit harder than they should have. Kandahar. 3 years ago. 16 operators went in. 4 came out. Mara had been one of the 4, and she'd spent every day since wondering if she should have been. Your information's incomplete, she said into the radio. But I'm happy to fill in the gaps. Come on in. I'll wait. We know the building is empty except for you. Thermal imaging shows 1 heat signature. You abandoned your patients. Very professional. Amateur mistake. They had thermal but hadn't thought about what 30 feet of concrete would do to the signature. Or they'd seen only 1 signature on the main floor and assumed the rest had fled. Either way, they just told her they didn't know about the basement. You want me? Mara said. I'm in the main ward. Front entrance is open. Come say hello. She clicked off the radio and moved fast, circling to the west side of the building where a service entrance led to the loading dock. The door was unlocked. She'd made sure of that weeks ago. She slipped outside into the night, staying low, using the shadows cast by burning guard towers. The smell of smoke was thick now, mixing with the chemical stench of spent ammunition. 2 tactical team members stood 30 feet away, weapons trained on the main entrance, waiting for the order to breach. They hadn't noticed her yet. Mara pulled the combat knife from her belt, balanced the weight in her hand, and made a choice she'd made 100 times before in a life she'd tried to leave behind. The first man died without a sound, the knife punching through the gap between his vest and helmet, severing his spinal cord. She caught his body as it fell, lowered it silently, and moved on the second before he could process what had happened. Her hand clamped over his mouth as the knife found his throat. Arterial spray painted the gravel black in the night vision's green glow. 5 down. She dragged both bodies into the shadow of a storage container, stripped them of ammunition and grenades. The grenades were flashbangs, non-lethal but effective. She clipped 3 to her belt and kept moving, circling the perimeter, hunting. The tactical radio crackled again. Different voice this time, higher rank, judging by the authority. Hail! We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Surrender now. We make it quick. Make us work for it, and we'll spend hours on you before we let you die. Your choice. Mara found 2 more team members positioned near the East Guard Tower. They were focused on the main building, night vision goggles tracking the windows. She approached from behind, moving like smoke, and put 2 rounds through the first man's head before he knew she was there. The second spun, bringing his weapon up, and she closed the distance instead of shooting, using his own rifle to redirect his aim while her knife found his kidney. He went down gasping. 7. She took position in the guard tower itself, climbing the ladder quickly, and used the elevation to survey the compound. 8 hostiles still active, spread in a loose perimeter around the medical building. They were getting nervous now. 2 teams down, no contact, and their target wasn't playing the script they'd expected. Mara pulled one of the flashbangs from her belt, armed it, and threw it toward the cluster of 3 men near the north entrance. The grenade detonated with a sharp crack and a burst of white light that overloaded their night vision. She opened fire from the tower, controlled bursts, taking 2 down before they could recover. The third found cover behind a vehicle and returned fire, rounds sparking off the tower's metal frame. 9 down, 6 to go. The radio erupted with shouted commands. They'd figured out she wasn't in the building. The remaining tactical team members were repositioning, converging on the tower. Mara dropped the empty rifle, pulled the second one from her back, and descended the ladder fast. By the time boots hit the ground outside, she was already gone, moving toward the vehicle depot on the compound's south side. 3 trucks sat in a row, engines cold, keys probably in the duty office. Mara crouched between the middle truck and the one on the right, breathing controlled, listening. Footsteps on gravel. At least 2, maybe 3. They were being cautious now. She'd hurt them badly enough that caution made sense. A shadow moved past the front of the truck. Mara waited. Patience was a weapon people forgot to use. They expected action, reaction, constant movement. But sometimes the smartest move was to be perfectly still and let the enemy create the opening. The shadow resolved into a man, rifle raised, sweeping the area. He moved past her position, and she let him go. The second man followed 10 seconds later, maintaining proper tactical spacing. Also let him pass. The third would be hanging back, covering the first two. There. 30 feet away, partially concealed behind a concrete barrier, weapon up, scanning. Mara moved, not toward him. Away. She circled wide, using the trucks for cover, coming at him from the blind side where his attention was focused forward. When she was close enough, she dropped the rifle, too loud, and used the knife again. Quick, efficient. He fell without a sound. 10. The radio crackled. Sound off, Team 3, report. Silence. Team 3, sound off now. Mara keyed the radio, pitched her voice low, accent neutral. Team 3, sector clear, moving to rally point. It bought her maybe 30 seconds. Enough time to strip the body of ammunition and grab his sidearm, a compact 9mm with a suppressor already attached. Quiet work from here on out. She moved back toward the medical building, staying in the shadows, tracking the remaining 5 hostiles by sound and movement. 2 were near the main entrance, finally preparing to breach. They'd wasted 10 minutes on perimeter security and lost most of their team doing it. Now they were committed. Mara watched from 50 feet away as they stacked up, ready to go through the door on a 3 count. She shot the first one through the side of his head. The suppressed round made a sound like a hand slap. He dropped, and the second man spun, searching for the shooter. She put 2 rounds in his chest before he could acquire a target. Both men down in under 3 seconds. 12. 3 left. And they just watched 2 more teammates die without seeing where the shots came from. The radio again. Different voice. Calm. Almost conversational. Impressive. 12 of my men dead in under 15 minutes. You're better than the file suggested, Miss Hale. I'm almost sad we have to kill you. Mara didn't respond. Let them wonder. But you see, the voice continued, this was never just about you. You're certainly the primary objective, but there's a secondary concern. We have information that suggests one of the soldiers in your care knows things he shouldn't. A Captain Joel Renner, Special Operations, recently involved in a mission that compromised certain business interests in the region. Her blood went cold. So here's what happens next, the voice said. You surrender, we kill you quickly, and Captain Renner lives long enough to answer some questions. You continue this juvenile resistance, and we burn the building to the ground with everyone inside. The basement you think is so clever? We know about it. We've known since we started planning this operation. 30 feet of concrete is impressive, but it won't stop thermite charges. Mara looked at the medical building. At the sealed entrance, she'd shoved Renner through. At the men hiding below who thought they were safe. She'd made a mistake. A critical one. She'd assumed they wanted her and only her. But mercenary teams didn't mobilize 15 operators for a single retired asset. The math didn't work. There had to be more. The voice on the radio wasn't finished. You have 2 minutes to present yourself at the main entrance, hands visible, weapons down. After 2 minutes, we start the fire. Your choice, Miss Hale. But choose quickly. She keyed the radio. You're lying about the thermite. If you could breach that basement, you'd have done it already instead of making offers. Laughter. You're right. We can't breach it quickly, but we can make it a tomb. And eventually thirst will drive them out. We're patient people. The question is, are you? Mara checked her watch. 17 minutes since she'd called for air support. 5 more minutes until arrival. Could she hold 5 minutes? Could the men below survive 5 minutes if the building started burning above them? She'd spent 2 years trying to stop being the person who made these decisions. 2 years working a job where the hardest choice was which dressing to apply to which wound, and now she was right back where she started, counting lives against probabilities, making calculations that had no good answers. The satellite phone in her pocket vibrated. Incoming message. She pulled it out, checked the screen. AR support delayed. Hostile surface-to-air detected in your area. New ETA 12 minutes. Can you hold? 12 more minutes. The men below had water for maybe 6 hours. Air for longer. But if the building started burning, smoke would find ways through concrete that seemed solid. And if these mercenaries had planned as well as they claimed, they'd have contingencies she hadn't thought of. She typed back, "No choice, will hold." The response came instantly. "Additional assets inbound, hold position, do not engage in negotiations." Easy to say from a safe distance. Harder when you were standing in a compound full of bodies you'd made, trying to decide if 3 more mattered against the 23 hiding underground. Mara moved toward the main entrance, staying low, circling wide to approach from an unexpected angle. The three remaining hostiles would be watching the obvious approaches. She needed to see their positions before making any decisions. She found them clustered near the entrance, using an overturned vehicle for cover. Professional spacing, good sight lines. They'd learned from watching their teammates die. The man who'd been talking on the radio stood in the center, taller than the others, carrying himself with the kind of confidence that came from never having lost before. He was holding something in his left hand, small, rectangular. Remote detonator. Mara's stomach dropped. They hadn't been bluffing about the charges. They just hadn't placed them in the basement. They'd placed them in the building itself, probably load-bearing walls. Bring the whole structure down, and 30 feet of concrete became 30 feet of burial. The tall man checked his watch. 1 minute, Miss Hale. Then we find out how much you care about your patients. She could take the shot. From this distance, with the suppressed 9mm, she could probably drop one before they reacted. Maybe two if she was fast and lucky. But the third would hit that detonator and the building would come down, unless she could get the detonator first. Mara set down the rifle, set down the tactical vest with the remaining grenades, kept only the knife and the 9mm. She needed to be fast for this. Light. She took 3 deep breaths, centering herself, pushing down the part of her brain that was screaming this was suicide. Then she stood up and walked into the open, hands visible, weapon held loosely at her side. The 3 mercenaries spun, weapons tracking her instantly. The tall man smiled. Practical decision, he said. Drop the weapon. Mara let the 9mm fall. It hit the gravel with a clatter. And the knife. She unclipped the sheath from her belt, tossed it away. The tall man gestured. Come closer, slowly. She walked forward, hands still visible, counting steps. 20 feet, 15, 10. Close enough to see his face clearly in the darkness, the way his eyes tracked her movement, assessing threat level and finding her wanting now that she was disarmed. You know why we're here, he said. I know you made a mistake coming at all. He laughed. Defiant to the end, I respect that. Before we finish this, I'm curious, how many of my men did you actually kill yourself? Because the file we have says you washed out of your unit after Kandahar. Psychological discharge. Barely functional. But the woman I've been watching tonight is anything but barely functional. The file's wrong. Clearly. So what's the truth? Who are you really, Mara Hale? Behind him, one of the other mercenaries shifted position slightly. Just enough. The angle changed. Mara could see it now. The remote detonator wasn't some sophisticated military hardware. It was commercial grade. Radio frequency trigger, which meant it had a range. And at 10 feet, she was well within the interference zone of the tactical jammer she'd noticed earlier clipped to the tall man's belt. She smiled. I'm the person who's about to make you regret asking. She moved before he could process the words. Not away. Toward him. Closing the distance in 2 explosive steps, her hand snapping out to grab the detonator. He reacted fast, credit where it was due, bringing his weapon up, finger tightening on the trigger. But Mara was already inside his reach, her body twisting, using his own arm as leverage to throw him off balance. The detonator flew from his grip. Mara caught it midair with her left hand while her right drove into his throat. He staggered back, choking, and she spun toward the second mercenary who was bringing his rifle around. Too slow. She was already moving, low and fast, tackling him below the knees. They went down together, and she drove her elbow into his temple hard enough to crack bone. The third mercenary had a clear shot. He took it. The round hit Mara in the left shoulder, punching through muscle, spinning her halfway around. Pain exploded white-hot and immediate. She rolled with the impact, came up with the detonator still clutched in her left hand, and threw it with everything she had remaining toward the burning guard tower 50 feet away. It arced through the air, tumbling, and disappeared into the flames. The mercenary who'd shot her hesitated, watching the detonator vanish, and that hesitation was fatal. Mara surged to her feet, grabbed the knife from the second mercenary's belt, and buried it in the third man's gut before he could reacquire his target. He screamed. She twisted the blade and shoved him away. The tall man had recovered enough to raise his sidearm. Mara saw it coming, knew she couldn't dodge, and did the only thing left. She charged straight at him. His shot went wide. Her shoulder, the wounded one, slammed into his chest, and they both went down hard. She ended up on top, her good hand finding his throat, squeezing. He clawed at her face, brought his knee up into her ribs. She held on, vision tunneling, the world reducing to just this moment, this pressure, this choice to keep squeezing until something gave. It took 30 seconds. Felt like 30 hours. When his body finally went limp, Mara rolled off him and lay on her back, staring at the night sky, breathing hard. Blood was running down her arm from the shoulder wound. Not arterial. She'd live. Probably. 13. 14. 15. All of them down. She forced herself to sit up, then stand. The compound was silent now except for the crackle of flames and the distant sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She stumbled toward the medical building, found the hidden entrance, and hammered on it with her good hand. "Renner, open up! It's clear!" The mechanism clicked. The door swung inward. Renner stood there, rifle raised, looking past her at the carnage visible through the entrance. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. Mara pushed past him, descended 3 stairs, and sat down hard. 12 minutes. Air support in 12 minutes. Nobody comes up until then. "You're shot. I'm aware. I'm fine. Just sit down and shut up for 12 minutes. Can you do that?" Renner stared at her for a long moment. Then he lowered the rifle and sat beside her on the stairs. "You saved all of us," he said quietly. Mara leaned her head back against the concrete wall, eyes closed. "I just killed 15 people. Don't make me a hero. They came here to murder everyone in this building. They came here for me. The rest of you were collateral." "That's not—" The satellite phone in her pocket vibrated again. Mara pulled it out, checked the message with her good hand. "AR support ETA 8 minutes. Ground team inbound behind them. Stay put. Do not attempt to leave compound." She showed the message to Renner. He read it, then looked at her. "Ground team, they're sending people to clean this up. And to debrief me." Mara closed her eyes again, "which means someone's going to want answers I don't want to give." "About Kandahar?" She opened one eye. "You heard that?" "I heard everything. The radio was loud enough." He paused. "Is it true? Did you run?" Mara was quiet for a long time. Above them, something in the building shifted and groaned, probably structural damage from the firefight. When she finally spoke, her voice was flat. "I was the communications officer. 16 of us went in to extract a high-value target from a compound in Kandahar province. Intelligence said light resistance. Intel was wrong. We walked into an ambush, 40 hostiles, military-grade weapons, coordinated defense. They hit us before we reached the primary structure. My team leader ordered me to fall back and call for air support while the others pushed forward to complete the mission. I followed orders, called in the strike, waited for confirmation." She paused, jaw tight. "It took 6 minutes for the aircraft to reach us. In those 6 minutes, I listened to my team die over the radio, one by one, screaming for help that wasn't coming. When the strike finally hit, there were 4 of us left out of 16. The after-action review said I did everything right, followed procedure, saved lives by calling in support, but 12 people died while I sat in cover and talked to a pilot." Renner was quiet. Then, "That's not running. It's surviving when better people didn't. Close enough." "That's bullshit. You did your job." "My job was to keep them alive." "Your job was communications. You communicated. They died because intelligence failed and the enemy was stronger than expected. That's not on you." Mara laughed, harsh and bitter. "Tell that to the families. Tell them their sons and daughters and husbands and wives died while I crouched behind a wall doing exactly what I was supposed to do." "So you what? Became a nurse? Tried to save lives that way instead?" "I tried to become invisible, someone who didn't matter enough for people to die around." She looked at him. "Worked great until tonight." Above them, the sound of rotor blades cut through the night, heavy aircraft, multiple. The air support had arrived early. Renner stood, offered her a hand. "Come on. We should get upstairs before they think we're hostiles." Mara took his hand, let him pull her up. Pain lanced through her shoulder, sharp enough to make her vision swim. She steadied herself against the wall. "You need medical attention," Renner said. "I am medical attention." "Physician? Heal thyself?" Something like that. They climbed the stairs together, emerged into the main ward just as searchlights from the helicopters swept across the building. Mara moved to the entrance, raised her good hand to shield her eyes from the glare. 3 aircraft circling overhead. No, 4. Military markings. Fast rope teams already deploying to the ground. The satellite phone buzzed again. Identify yourself, hands visible. Mara keyed the phone. Hail. Medical staff. 15 hostiles down. 23 wounded secured. Stand by for ground team approach. She watched as a tactical team advanced toward the building, weapons ready but not aimed. Professional. Cautious. They'd been briefed on what to expect, but were seeing the reality now. Bodies scattered across the compound, burning vehicles. The kind of carnage that suggested a full-scale battle rather than one woman with a rifle and a knife. The team leader reached the entrance, swept the interior with his weapon, then lowered it when he saw Mara and Renner standing there, unarmed, exhausted. "Ma'am," he said, "we're here to secure the area and provide evacuation for wounded personnel. Are you injured?" Mara glanced at her shoulder. "Flesh wound. I'll live." "And the hostiles just dead. All 15. The team leader's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Respect, maybe, or disbelief. "And you did this alone?" "I had motivation." Behind the team leader, more soldiers were spreading out, securing the perimeter, checking bodies, establishing a defensive position. One of them called out, voice sharp with alarm. "Sir, we have charges placed on the building's support columns. They're not armed, but—" "Detonator's gone," Mara said. "Threw it in a fire. Should be inert now, but you'll want to get disposal here anyway." The team leader studied her for a moment, then he keyed his radio. "Command, this is Alpha 1. Area secure. Hostile force eliminated. Request immediate evac for wounded and a debrief team for the asset." Asset. Not nurse. Not medical staff. Asset. Mara felt the walls closing in, the invisible ones that came when people started asking questions you couldn't answer without destroying the life you'd built. She'd spent 2 years being nobody. Now she was somebody again, and that somebody had a file and a history and obligations that didn't end just because she'd tried to walk away. Renner must have seen something in her expression because he stepped closer, voice low. "Whatever happens next, you saved 23 lives tonight. Don't forget that." "I won't," Mara said. "But I won't forget the 15 I took either." More helicopters were landing now, medical teams rushing toward the building with stretchers and equipment. The basement entrance was opened, and the wounded soldiers began emerging, blinking in the searchlights, looking around at the compound with expressions that suggested they couldn't quite believe they were still alive. Collins, the private with the bandaged shoulder, was one of the first out. He saw Mara and stopped, stared. "You killed all of them," he said. Not a question, a statement of fact that his brain was still processing. "I did." "How?" Mara looked at the bodies visible through the entrance, at the tactical teams moving efficiently through the compound, at the helicopters that had come because she'd made a phone call she'd sworn never to make again. "Because," she said quietly, "sometimes invisible isn't enough. Sometimes you have to be the thing people are afraid of." The team leader approached again, this time with a tablet in hand. "Ma'am, I need to collect some information for the debrief. Can you confirm your full name and identification number?" Here it was, the moment where the past caught up with the present and demanded an accounting. Mara straightened, ignoring the pain in her shoulder, and looked the team leader in the eye. "Mara Hale, former designation code Whiskey 37, Special Activities Division. Status, inactive." The team leader's expression shifted. Recognition. He'd heard of Whiskey 37. Everyone in certain circles had. "Ma'am," he said, and this time there was actual deference in his voice. "I need to inform you that higher command has requested your immediate transport to a secure facility for debriefing regarding tonight's events and other matters." Other matters. That meant they wanted to talk about Kandahar, about why an inactive operator was working as a nurse in the middle of nowhere, about how she'd managed to kill 15 trained mercenaries without backup or proper equipment. "Am I being detained?" Mara asked. "No, ma'am, but the request comes from the highest levels. Refusing might complicate your status." Mara laughed, sharp and humorless. "My status is already complicated." A new voice cut through the conversation. That's enough, Lieutenant. Everyone turned. A man in civilian clothes was walking toward them, flanked by two soldiers who clearly weren't standard military. Private security, high level. The man himself was 50s, gray hair, expensive suit that looked out of place in a combat zone. He carried himself with the kind of authority that didn't need to announce itself. He stopped in front of Mara, studied her for a moment, then smiled. "Hello, Whiskey 37. It's been a long time." Mara's blood went cold. She knew that voice, knew that face. Marcus Strand, her former handler, the man who'd debriefed her after Kandahar, the man who'd signed off on her psychological discharge and her reassignment to inactive status, the man who'd promised she'd never have to do this work again. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Strand's smile didn't waver. "The same thing you are, cleaning up a mess. Though I have to say, when I got the alert that someone was using your old emergency code, I didn't believe it at first. Mara Hale, back from the dead. And you brought quite the body count with you. They came here to kill everyone in this building. They came here to kill you specifically. The rest was just insurance." Strand pulled out his own tablet, swiped through screens. "The mercenary team was hired by an organization you helped dismantle 3 years ago. Turns out they held a grudge. When they learned you were still alive, working under your real name at a forward medical station, well, opportunity presented itself. You knew they were coming. We suspected. We've been monitoring chatter for weeks, but we couldn't confirm until tonight." Mara felt rage building behind her ribs, hot and sharp. "You used me as bait. We used an inactive asset to draw out a hostile force that's been targeting our operations for 2 years, and it worked. 15 confirmed kills, 0 civilian casualties, and we now have leverage against their organization." Strand closed the tablet. "You should be proud. This is the most significant operation you've completed since Kandahar." "I'm not proud. I'm a nurse." "You're a weapon, or you've always been a weapon. Tonight just reminded everyone of that fact." Renner stepped forward, jaw tight. "She saved 23 lives. She's not—" Strand turned to him, expression cold. "Captain Renner, I suggest you focus on your own situation. We have questions about your recent mission in the Helmand sector. Questions that will require answers in a secure setting. So unless you want those questions to become formal charges, I recommend you stay quiet and let the adults talk." Renner opened his mouth, then closed it. Mara could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. He was military. Strand clearly had rank or authority that made military rank irrelevant. Fighting this would only make things worse. Strand turned back to Mara. "Here's how this is going to work. You're coming with me. We're going to have a very long conversation about tonight, about Kandahar, and about what happens next with your status. After that conversation, we'll decide whether you go back to being a nurse or whether you become useful again." "I'm not going back," Mara said flatly. "That's not your decision anymore. The moment you used that emergency code, you reactivated yourself. You're operational again, whether you like it or not. I saved lives tonight. That doesn't obligate me to—" "You killed 15 people using skills we trained you to use, equipment we provided, and support protocols we authorized. That absolutely obligates you." Strand gestured toward one of the helicopters. "Now, we can do this the easy way, where you walk to that aircraft and we have a civilized conversation. Or we can do it the hard way, where my associates escort you and we have a very different kind of conversation. Your choice." Mara looked around, at the tactical team securing the compound, at Renner standing helpless beside her, at the wounded soldiers being loaded onto medical transports, alive because she'd decided to stop being invisible for one night, at the bodies scattered across the gravel, dead because she'd remembered how to be exactly what Strand said she was. A weapon. She turned back to Strand. "If I come with you, what happens to them?" She gestured toward the medical evac in progress. "They get the care they need. Full medical support, psych evaluations, the works. Captain Renner answers some questions and probably gets cleared. Everyone goes home." "And if I refuse?" Strand's expression hardened. "Then people start asking uncomfortable questions about how a discharged operator ended up at this specific facility at this specific time, working under her real name. Questions that might lead to complications for everyone involved, including the 23 soldiers you just saved." It was a threat. Thinly veiled, but clear. Cooperate or watch everything she'd tried to protect get pulled into whatever political machinery Strand represented. Mara took a deep breath, tasted smoke and blood and failure on her tongue. "I want your word," she said. "They all walk away clean. No complications, no investigations, no careers ruined because they happened to be here when this went down." "You have it." "Your word means nothing." "Then you'll have to take it on faith." Strand checked his watch. "Decide now, Whiskey 37. The clock's running, and I have other appointments tonight." Mara looked one last time at Renner, at Collins, at the faces of men who'd dismissed her as just a nurse hours ago and were now watching her like she'd grown wings and a tail. "Okay," she said quietly. "Let's go." Strand nodded, gestured toward the helicopter. Mara started walking, and with each step felt the nurse falling away and the weapon taking her place, inevitable as gravity, heavy as all the choices she'd thought she'd escaped. Behind her, Renner called out, "Hail!" She stopped, didn't turn around. "Thank you." She didn't respond. What was there to say? "You're welcome for the violence? You're welcome for remembering how to kill efficiently? You're welcome for being exactly what I promised myself I'd never be again?" Instead, she just kept walking toward the helicopter, toward Strand, toward whatever came next in a life that had stopped being hers the moment she'd picked up that rifle and remembered muscle memory doesn't forget. The rotors spun up. The door closed. And as the aircraft lifted off, Mara watched Coldwater Medical Station recede below. The burning guard towers, the scattered bodies, the place where she'd tried to be invisible and failed completely. Strand settled into the seat across from her, opened his tablet again. "Before we begin the formal debrief," he said, "I should mention one additional detail about tonight's incident." Mara didn't look at him. "What detail?" "The mercenary team that attacked you? They weren't the only ones hired. There's a second team, already en route to a different target." Now she looked at him. "What target?" Strand smiled, and it was the coldest thing she'd seen all night. "That," he said, "is what we need to discuss." The helicopter banked hard left, and Mara's shoulder slammed against the bulkhead. Pain exploded fresh and immediate, reminding her that adrenaline only delayed consequences, never eliminated them. She gritted her teeth, forced herself to focus on Strand's face instead of the fire spreading down her arm. "What target?" she repeated. Strand swiped through his tablet, turned the screen toward her. A photograph filled the display. A compound in mountainous terrain, walls topped with razor wire, guard towers at each corner. Military installation, but the vehicles parked inside weren't standard issue. Private security, high-value asset protection. This facility is located 40 kilometers west of Kandahar. It houses a rehabilitation center for former covert operators. People like you, people who've been through hell and need time to put themselves back together. Strand's voice was clinical, detached. 3 days ago, our signals intelligence intercepted communications suggesting the same organization that sent tonight's team has a secondary objective. They're planning to hit the facility within the next 72 hours. Current estimates suggest they'll arrive sometime in the next 6 to 8 hours. Mara stared at the photograph, counted 15 visible structures, at least 30 personnel moving between buildings. How many patients? 47. Most of them non-combat capable. PTSD, traumatic brain injuries, missing limbs. Some are functional, most aren't. And you're telling me this why? Because you know that facility better than anyone else on my roster. Strand swiped to another image, an interior shot of a medical ward, beds lined against white walls, windows overlooking a courtyard. You spent 6 months there after Kandahar. You know the layout, the security protocols, the evacuation procedures. More importantly, you know the people. Some of them are still there, still trying to put themselves back together. Mara's mouth went dry. She remembered that ward, remembered lying in one of those beds, staring at the ceiling, listening to other patients scream through their nightmares. Remembered faces, names, people who'd become friends because they were the only ones who understood what it meant to survive when survival felt like punishment. "You want me to go there?" she said. Not a question. "I want you to lead a defensive operation, small team, surgical precision. Get inside before the attack, fortify positions, coordinate with existing security, and hold until reinforcements arrive." "How long until reinforcements?" 12 hours. Maybe longer if weather conditions deteriorate. So you want me to defend 47 non-combatants against a professional assault team for half a day with a small team and local security? Mara laughed, hollow and bitter. That's not a defensive operation. That's a suicide mission with extra steps. It's a chance to save lives. The same lives you'd want saved if you were still lying in one of those beds. The helicopter hit turbulence and Mara grabbed the overhead strap with her good hand. Her shoulder was bleeding again, soaking through the improvised bandage someone had wrapped during the evac. She needed proper medical attention. Rest. Time to process what had happened at Coldwater. Instead, Strand was asking her to walk into another firefight. "Why me?" she asked. "You've got dozens of operators who could run this. Active operators who aren't bleeding and exhausted and 2 years out of practice. Because the facility director specifically requested you." Mara's head snapped up. "Who?" Strand swiped to another image. A woman, mid-40s, dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, eyes that had seen too much and remembered all of it. Dr. Sarah Chen, chief psychiatrist. The woman who'd spent 6 months trying to convince Mara that surviving Kandahar wasn't something to apologize for. Dr. Chen has been monitoring the situation since the intelligence came through. When she learned we were considering a defensive operation, she asked for you specifically, said you were the only person she'd trust to understand what's at stake. She's wrong. Is she? Because from where I'm sitting, you just proved exactly how capable you are when people's lives depend on it. Mara looked away, out the window at the darkness rushing past. Below, the landscape was invisible, just scattered lights marking towns too small to matter. What you're asking for? I can't. Can't or won't. Does it matter? Yes. Can't means you're genuinely unable. Won't means you're afraid. And I've seen your performance tonight. Fear isn't your problem. The words hit harder than they should have. Mara closed her eyes, felt exhaustion pulling at the edges of consciousness. She'd been awake for 28 hours, worked a double shift, killed 15 people, got shot. And now Strand wanted her to do it again, only this time with worse odds and people she actually cared about in the crossfire. I need to think, she said. You have 5 minutes. That's how long until we land at the staging area. 5 minutes isn't... 5 minutes is what you have. After that, I'm sending someone else. Someone who doesn't know the facility. Someone who doesn't know the patients. Someone who will make decisions based on tactics instead of humanity. Strand leaned forward. Your choice, Whiskey 37. Be the weapon you've always been, or be the nurse who watches from a distance while people die. Mara wanted to hit him. Wanted to tell him exactly where he could shove his ultimatums and his manipulations and his certainty that violence was always the answer. But the photograph of Dr. Chen was still visible on the tablet screen, and Mara could remember with perfect clarity the day Chen had told her something that had kept her breathing when breathing felt pointless. You're not responsible for their deaths, Chen had said, but you are responsible for what you do with the life you have left. Make it count. Mara opened her eyes. What's the team composition? Strand's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes suggested satisfaction. 4 operators, all active, all experienced. They'll take tactical direction from you, but they answer to me if you go off mission. Equipment? Full loadout. Whatever you need that's portable. Air support? Limited. We can't risk overt military presence in that region without political blowback. You'll have emergency extraction if things go completely sideways, but no combat air support unless it's life or death. It will be life or death. That's the whole point. Then you'll have options. Strand closed the tablet. But understand this. If you take this mission, you're back in. Fully operational. No more pretending to be someone else. The moment you set foot in that facility, Mara Hale, the nurse, ceases to exist. Only Whiskey 37 remains. The helicopter's engines changed pitch. Descending. Mara could see lights ahead now. A military installation lit up like a small city. Staging area, where decisions became actions and actions became consequences. She thought about the soldiers at Coldwater, about Renner's expression when he'd finally understood what she was, about Collins asking how she'd killed all of them, like violence was a magic trick instead of a skill learned through repetition and necessity. She thought about Dr. Chen, who'd never looked at her like a weapon or a failure, just a human being trying to survive the weight of impossible choices. She thought about 47 people lying in beds, fighting battles no one else could see, trying to heal from wounds that never showed up on X-rays. "Okay," Mara said quietly. "I'm in." The helicopter touched down hard, jarring her wounded shoulder. She hissed through her teeth, and Strand gestured toward the door. "Medical team's waiting. They'll patch you up, give you stims if you need them, and get you briefed. Wheels up in 30 minutes. Mara unbuckled, stood on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. 30 minutes isn't enough time to... It's what you have. Manage it. She stepped out into rotor wash that stung her eyes and tasted like jet fuel. The staging area was organized chaos, personnel moving with purpose, equipment being loaded onto transport aircraft, voices calling orders over the engine noise. A medical team approached immediately, and Mara let them guide her toward a portable treatment facility set up near the flight line. Inside, the lighting was harsh and clinical. A combat medic, young, female, competent-looking, gestured toward a chair. "Sit. Let me see the shoulder." Mara sat. The medic cut away the improvised bandage, exposing the wound. Entry and exit, clean through the deltoid muscle. Lucky shot, if you could call getting shot lucky. Quarter inch in any direction, and it would have shattered bone or nicked the brachial artery. "You need a surgeon," the medic said. "This should be properly debrided and closed in an OR." "Don't have time. Clean it, pack it, wrap it tight." "That's not... I'll be fine. I've had worse." The medic looked skeptical but reached for supplies. "Your funeral." The next 10 minutes were a study in controlled agony. The medic flushed the wound with saline, packed it with hemostatic gauze, and wrapped it in compression bandages that felt like someone was tightening a vise around her shoulder. Mara breathed through her teeth, focused on a spot on the wall, and reminded herself that pain meant alive. "You want stims?" the medic asked, holding up a preloaded syringe. Mara shook her head. "Just ibuprofen. I need to think clearly." "Your call." The medic handed over a bottle. 800 milligrams every 6 hours. Don't exceed 3,200 in 24 hours. And if you start feeling dizzy or short of breath, you're bleeding internally and you need immediate evac. Understood. I mean it. Internal bleeding will kill you faster than another bullet. I said I understand. The medic stepped back, gathered the bloody supplies. There's clean clothes in the locker to your left. Briefing room is 2 buildings over, green door. Someone will meet you there. Mara stood, tested the range of motion in her shoulder. Limited but functional. She could aim, could pull a trigger, couldn't do much else, but that would have to be enough. The clean clothes were standard tactical gear. Black fatigues, boots that actually fit, a vest with ceramic plates that would stop most rifle rounds. She dressed quickly, muscle memory handling the straps and buckles while her mind ran through what she remembered about the rehabilitation facility. Main building, 3 stories, reinforced concrete. Medical wing on the ground floor. Residential on 2 and 3. Administrative offices in a separate structure. Security checkpoint at the main gate. Secondary entrance through the vehicle depot. Guard towers at corners 1 and 4. Armory in the basement of the main building, accessible only with biometric clearance. How many security personnel? She couldn't remember. 20? 30? They'd been contractors when she was there, but that was 2 years ago. Personnel rotated. Protocols changed. She'd be walking into a facility she knew from memory but didn't know in current reality. The briefing room was exactly where the medic had said. Mara pushed through the green door and found 4 people waiting. 3 men, 1 woman, all wearing the same tactical gear she'd just put on. They looked up when she entered, and she could see the assessment happening in their eyes, sizing her up, deciding if she was worth following. The woman spoke first. "You're Whiskey 37. Mara, just use Mara." "I'm Reeves. This is Carson, Liu, and Michaels." She gestured to each man in turn. "We were told you'd be running tactical for this operation." Mara studied them. Reeves was early 30s, compact and efficient looking. Carson was older, maybe 45, with the kind of scars that told stories. Liu was younger, nervous energy barely contained. Michaels was unreadable, face blank, posture suggesting military background. "What have you been briefed on?" Mara asked. Carson answered. "Rehabilitation facility, 47 non-combatants, expected hostile assault within 8 hours. We're supposed to fortify and hold until relief arrives. Standard defensive posture with civilians in the mix. Not standard. These aren't random civilians. They're former operators dealing with severe psychological and physical trauma. Some of them will be functional under stress. Some will completely break down. We need to identify who's who fast and make decisions accordingly. Liu frowned. How do we identify? I'll handle that. I know most of them. Mara moved to the table where a tactical map was spread out, showing the facility's layout. What's our equipment loadout? Reeves pulled up an inventory on her tablet. Standard rifles, sidearms, grenades, breaching charges, medical supplies, communications gear. We've also got 2 sniper rifles, night vision for everyone, and enough ammunition to hold off a small army for about 6 hours. That's not enough. It's what we have. Mara studied the map. The facility was positioned in a valley, mountains on 3 sides, open terrain to the south. Defensively, it was a nightmare. Too many approaches. Not enough natural barriers. The architects had designed it for healing, not warfare. Current security status? She asked. Michael spoke for the first time, voice low and gravelly. Facility has 22 active security personnel, mostly contractors, some former military. They're equipped for perimeter defense and emergency response, not sustained combat. When we arrive, we'll have approximately 3 hours to assess, fortify, and prepare before the attack window opens. 3 hours to prepare for an assault by professionals who've spent weeks planning this. Mara shook her head. We're going to lose people. Maybe, Carson said, but we'll lose more if we don't try. Mara looked at him, at the scars, at the eyes that had seen this equation before and knew the math never worked out clean. You've done this before, this. Defensive operations with civilians. Twice. Lost civilians both times, but we saved more than we lost. He met her gaze steadily. That's the best you can hope for in these situations. Save more than you lose. The door opened. Strand entered, followed by 2 analysts carrying additional equipment. Status? Getting briefed, Mara said. We need more intel on the hostile force. Numbers, equipment, approach vectors. One of the analysts set a laptop on the table, pulled up satellite imagery. We've identified a convoy moving east from the Pakistani border. 12 vehicles, approximately 40 to 50 combatants. They're equipped with heavy weapons. We've confirmed at least 2 machine gun platforms and what looks like a mortar team. 50 combatants against 22 security personnel and 5 operators. The math was ugly. When will they arrive? Mara asked. Projection says 6 hours, maybe 7 if terrain slows them down. Mara checked her watch. 0340 hours. 03. Dawn would come around 6:30. If they were lucky, the assault would happen in daylight, where visibility favored the defenders. If they weren't lucky, the attackers would hit during the transition, light enough to see, dark enough for confusion. We need to leave now, she said. Strand nodded. Transport's ready. You'll insert via helicopter 2 kilometers south of the facility. Approach on foot to avoid alerting local population. Once inside, you have full tactical authority until relief arrives. And if relief doesn't arrive? It will. But if it doesn't? Strand's expression hardened. Then you make the hard choices, save who you can, minimize casualties, and make sure the hostiles pay for every inch of ground. Mara turned back to the team. Gear up. We move in 5. They dispersed efficiently, gathering equipment, checking weapons, running through pre-flight protocols that had been drilled into them through repetition. Mara watched them work, saw the competence, the professionalism, good operators. But good wasn't always enough when the numbers were wrong. Strand approached, voice low. You look worried. I am worried. We're outnumbered 10-1, defending a facility designed for therapy, not combat. The patients are vulnerable. The security force is undertrained for this scenario. And we have 6 hours to prepare for an assault that's been planned for weeks. Mara looked at him. What part of that shouldn't worry me? The part where you've already proved you can beat worse odds. Tonight was different. Tonight I was defending a static position with advance warning and the element of surprise. This is an open facility with multiple approach vectors and civilians who will panic the moment shooting starts. So adapt. That's what you do. Mara wanted to argue, wanted to explain that adaptation had limits, and this situation was testing all of them. But the team was ready, and time was moving whether she liked it or not. The flight to the insertion point took 40 minutes. Mara spent the time reviewing the facility layout on her tablet, memorizing changes from 2 years ago, identifying potential strong points and fatal weaknesses. The main building's third floor had good sight lines but limited cover. The medical wing was reinforced but had too many windows. The vehicle depot could be fortified but was isolated from the main structure. No perfect answers, just less terrible options. The helicopter descended fast, and Mara felt her stomach drop. The pilot's voice came through her headset. 30 seconds to insertion. Weather's clear. No contacts visible. The team moved to the door, weapons ready, eyes adjusted to night vision. Mara was third in the stack behind Reeves and Carson. When the aircraft touched down, they deployed in perfect sequence. Out, spread, establish perimeter, signal all clear. The helicopter lifted off immediately, leaving them alone in the darkness 2 kilometers from people who might die because Mara wasn't good enough to save them. Move out, she said quietly. Tactical spacing, noise discipline. Carson, take point. They moved through the night like ghosts, covering ground quickly but carefully. The terrain was rocky, uneven, perfect for twisted ankles and broken equipment. Mara's shoulder throbbed with each step, but she ignored it. Pain was information. Information could be managed. 20 minutes later, they reached the facility's southern perimeter. Carson raised a fist and the team froze. Ahead, lights were visible through the darkness. Guard towers, perimeter lighting, the main building's windows glowing soft yellow. Mara keyed her radio. Facility security, this is an authorized military team requesting entrance. Verification code Delta 7 Whiskey 3, 7. Silence. Then a voice crackled back, suspicious. Repeat verification. Delta 7 Whiskey 3, 7. We're here on defensive orders from higher command. Open the south gate. More silence. Mara could imagine the conversation happening inside. Who the hell are these people? Should we let them in? What if it's a trick? Finally, approaching south gate. Weapons visible will be met with immediate defensive response. Understood. Weapons lowered. 4 personnel plus team leader. We're coming in. They walked forward slowly, hands visible, rifles pointed at the ground. The gate opened and security personnel emerged. 4 of them, weapons raised but not aimed. The lead guard was older, 50s maybe, with the bearing of someone who'd seen combat and didn't scare easily. Identification, he said. Mara pulled out the credentials Strand had provided. The guard examined them under a flashlight, then looked at her face, comparing it to the photo. You're Whiskey 3-7. I am. Dr. Chen said you'd be coming. She's waiting in the main building. He lowered his weapon, gestured for the others to do the same. I'm Henderson, head of security. If you're here, that means the intel was confirmed. Hostile force, approximately 50 combatants, ETA 6 hours. We need to see Dr. Chen immediately, then assess your defensive capabilities and begin fortifications. Henderson's face went pale. 50? We've got 22 personnel and equipment designed for perimeter security, not sustained assault. I know. That's why we're here. He turned, started walking toward the main building. This way, and for what it's worth, I hope you're as good as your file suggests. My file's probably optimistic. That's what I'm afraid of. They entered the main building through a side entrance. The interior was exactly as Mara remembered. Clean white walls, soft lighting designed to be soothing rather than institutional. The smell of antiseptic mixed with something that might have been lavender. Healing scents for people who needed healing. Dr. Chen was waiting in her office on the second floor. When Mara walked in, Chen stood immediately, crossed the room, and pulled her into a hug that made Mara's wounded shoulder scream. Easy, Mara gasped. I got shot. Chen stepped back, eyes widening. How bad? Through and through. Muscle damage. I'll live. You need proper treatment. I need to fortify this facility. Treatment can wait. Mara moved to the window, looked out at the compound. How many patients are mobile? Chen's expression shifted from concern to professional assessment. 21 can walk without assistance. 15 require mobility aids but are functional. The remaining 11 are bedridden or severely compromised. The 21 who can walk? How many are combat capable if pressed? Maybe 8. The others would break under stress. PTSD, traumatic brain injuries, dissociative disorders. Gunfire alone could trigger complete psychological collapse. Then we evacuate the non-combatants. To where? The nearest secure facility is 80 kilometers away, and we don't have transport for 47 people. Mara turned back to Chen. Then we find transport. Buses, trucks, whatever's available locally. It's 0400 hours. Nothing's available locally at 0400 hours. So we wake people up and make it available. Henderson, standing in the doorway, shook his head. Even if we could find vehicles, moving 47 people through hostile territory would make them targets. They'd be more vulnerable on the road than fortified here. Mara wanted to argue, wanted to find the solution that saved everyone without requiring impossible choices. But the clock was moving, and perfect solutions didn't exist in imperfect situations. Okay, she said. New plan. We identify the most vulnerable patients and move them to the basement level of the main building. Reinforced position, limited access points, defendable if everything else fails. The patients who can handle stress stay on upper floors where they can be moved quickly if needed. Combat-capable patients get the option to participate in defense or shelter with the vulnerable group. You're asking traumatized veterans to fight again, Chen said quietly. I'm asking them to choose. Some of them will want to fight. Some will need to fight. That's their call, not ours. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. I'll make the assessment. Start identifying who goes where. Mara turned to Henderson. I need your security team assembled in the main conference room in 15 minutes. Full briefing on current defensive capabilities, equipment inventory, and personnel assessment. Done. And I need the facility's complete layout, including maintenance access, ventilation systems, and any structural vulnerabilities. I'll have it ready. They dispersed, leaving Mara alone with her team in Chen's office. Reeves spoke first. What's your read? We're defending a therapeutic facility against a military assault force. It's going to be ugly. Define ugly. People die. Question is how many and which ones. Carson moved to the window, studying the compound. If they hit hard and fast, focus on overwhelming force, they'll breach perimeter in minutes. We need to slow them down. Create choke points, make them pay for every meter. Agreed. Liu, you're on explosives. I want the southern approach seeded with improvised obstacles and kill zones. Nothing that'll hurt civilians, but everything that'll slow an armored convoy. Liu nodded, already calculating. I'll need construction materials. Concrete barriers, rebar, anything heavy and movable. Henderson will provide. Michaels, you and Reeves start identifying firing positions. I want overlapping fields of fire on all approaches, with fallback positions every 20 meters. They moved out, and Mara was left alone in the office that had once been a sanctuary. Through the window, she could see the compound where she'd spent 6 months learning to sleep without nightmares and failing most nights. 47 people down there now, most of them fighting battles that would never show up in any report. Her tablet buzzed. Message from Strand. Hostile convoy accelerating. New ETA 4.5 hours. Prepare accordingly. 4.5 hours. The universe was tightening the noose. Mara left the office, descended to the main conference room where Henderson's security team was assembling. 22 faces, ranging from early 20s to late 50s, some looking nervous, others grimly determined. Henderson stood at the front, arms crossed. This is Whiskey 37, he announced. She's running tactical for the defensive operation. What she says is gospel. Questions? One of the younger guards raised his hand. Are we really expecting 50 hostiles? Mara met his eyes. Approximately. Could be more. They're equipped with heavy weapons and military-grade equipment. They're professionals, and they're coming here specifically to kill everyone in this facility. The room went silent. But, Mara continued, they're expecting minimal resistance. They think this is a soft target. Easy in, easy out. Our job is to prove them wrong. Make every meter cost them. Make every breach a killing field. Make them regret deciding this was worth the contract. How do we do that? Another guard asked. By being smarter, meaner, and more willing to do whatever it takes to protect the people behind us. Mara pulled up the facility layout on the conference room screen. Henderson, What's our ammunition inventory? 10,000 rounds of 5.56, 5,009 millimeter, 2012 gauge, plus assorted grenades and breaching charges. Not enough for sustained engagement. We'll need to ration. Controlled bursts only. Make every shot count. She pointed to the screen. Our primary defensive line is the perimeter wall. Secondary line is the main building entrance. Tertiary is the stairwells and corridors inside. If we lose the perimeter, we fall back. If we lose the building entrance, we fall back again. No heroic stands. Controlled retreat with maximum attrition. Carson had entered during the briefing. He moved to the screen, added tactical markers. Sniper positions here and here, covering the south and east approaches. If they come from the west, we've got mountains limiting their mobility. North is our weak point. Open terrain, limited natural obstacles. So we mine the north approach, Lou said, entering behind Carson. Not actual mines, but enough improvised obstacles to channel them into kill zones. Mara nodded. Do it. You have 3 hours. The briefing continued for another 20 minutes, assigning positions, establishing communication protocols, running through contingency plans. When it ended, the security team dispersed with the kind of nervous energy that came from knowing violence was inevitable and preparation was all that stood between them and chaos. Dr. Chen found Mara in the armory checking weapons. I've completed the patient assessment. And? 11 go to the basement, too vulnerable for anything else. 20 are staying on upper floors ready to move if needed. 16 want to participate in defense. Mara looked up. 16. They're veterans. They know what's coming. Some of them need this. Need to feel useful. Need to fight instead of hide. I can't deny them that. They're patients. They're here to heal. They're people. They're here to survive. Sometimes those are the same thing. Chen handed over a list of names. These are the ones who volunteered. I've marked their capabilities and limitations. Use them wisely. Mara scanned the list, saw names she recognized. Morrison, multiple amputee, PTSD, but still lethal with a rifle. Patterson, traumatic brain injury, impulse control issues, but steady hands under pressure. Davis, blind in one eye, paranoid delusions, completely reliable in close quarters combat. Broken people. Dangerous people. People who'd been dismissed and forgotten and written off. People like her. I'll assign them to defensive positions away from primary breach points, Mara said. Backup roles, support fire. Nothing that requires split-second decision-making. That's all I ask. Chen left, and Mara returned to checking weapons. Her shoulder was throbbing worse now, the ibuprofen wearing off, pain reasserting itself with every movement. She dry-swallowed 2 more pills and kept working. Reeves appeared in the doorway. We've got a problem. Another one? Henderson's surveillance just picked up vehicle movement 30 kilometers south. Convoy matching the description of our hostiles. They're ahead of schedule. Mara checked her watch. 0512 hours. How far ahead? 2 hours, maybe less. The noose tightened again. Mara closed the weapon case, stood. Gather the team. We're moving to final defensive posture now. The next 90 minutes were controlled chaos. Lou finished seeding the north approach with improvised barriers, concrete blocks positioned to channel vehicles into narrow corridors, where concentrated fire would be most effective. Carson and Michaels established sniper positions on the main building's roof, with clear sight lines to all approaches. Reeves coordinated with Henderson's team, assigning firing positions, distributing ammunition, running through communication checks. Mara moved between positions, checking readiness, answering questions, making adjustments. Her shoulder was a constant fire now, vision occasionally swimming at the edges, but she pushed through. Pain later. Survival first. At 0620 hours, the first light of dawn touched the mountains to the east. Mara stood on the main building's roof, watching the south approach through binoculars. Nothing yet, just empty terrain and morning shadows. Her radio crackled. Henderson's voice. Movement detected, south approach, multiple vehicles. Confirmed. I see them, Mara counted. 12 vehicles exactly as intelligence had predicted, moving fast but cautiously, staying spread out to avoid presenting a concentrated target. She keyed the radio. All positions, this is Whiskey 37. Hostiles approaching from the south. ETA 3 minutes. Hold fire until my command. Snipers, you are weapons free on my mark. The convoy rolled closer. Close enough now that Mara could see individual vehicles, armored trucks, technical vehicles with mounted weapons, troop transports designed to deliver maximum personnel to the breach point. They stopped 300 meters out. Doors opened. Personnel deployed in organized formation, 52 combatants. Mara counted them through the binoculars, all armed, all moving with the kind of precision that confirmed what she already knew. These weren't amateurs. A figure emerged from the lead vehicle, tall, confident, carrying himself like someone who'd never lost and didn't plan to start. He raised a megaphone. Facility personnel, you are harboring war criminals. Surrender them now, and the rest of you live. Resist, and everyone dies. Mara keyed her radio to external broadcast. This facility houses medical patients under international protection. Your presence here violates multiple laws of armed conflict. Leave now, and we won't pursue charges. Laughter echoed across the compound. You have 1 minute to comply. After that, we come in, and we don't leave survivors. Mara looked down at the defenders spread across the facility. 22 security personnel, 5 operators, 16 broken veterans who'd volunteered to fight one more time, against 52 professionals who'd come here expecting easy targets. She thought about Kandahar, about sitting in cover while her team died because she'd followed orders and called for air support that came too late. She thought about Coldwater, about the moment she'd picked up that rifle and remembered what she was. She thought about the people in the basement, about Dr. Chen's belief that survival and healing could be the same thing, and she made the choice she'd been avoiding since Strand had asked her to come here. She keyed the radio. Snipers, target the leader. On my mark. Carson's voice came back calm. Locked. 3, 2, 1. Mark. 2 shots, simultaneous. The tall figure dropped, megaphone falling from his hands. For 1 perfect second, the world was silent. Then every weapon in the hostile convoy opened fire at once, and the battle for the rehabilitation facility began. Bullets tore through the morning air, hammering into the perimeter wall, chewing through concrete and sending fragments spinning like shrapnel. Mara dropped flat against the roof, felt rounds crack past where her head had been a second earlier. The hostile convoy had transformed from organized deployment to full assault in the span of a heartbeat, mounted weapons tracking toward defensive positions, infantry spreading in tactical formation, suppressive fire designed to overwhelm and terrify. But the defenders weren't civilians. They were professionals and veterans, and they'd spent 90 minutes preparing for exactly this. Henderson's voice cut through the radio chatter. North team, open fire. South team, hold position. The facility's northern defensive line erupted. Controlled bursts from prepared positions, each shot deliberate, each round counting against the limited ammunition supply. 2 hostile combatants went down immediately. A third stumbled, hit, but not dead, dragged behind cover by his teammates. Mara keyed her radio. Snipers, focus on mounted weapons. Take out the gunners. Carson's response was the crack of a rifle shot. 300 meters away, a gunner jerked backward, tumbled from his position on a technical vehicle. Michaels followed up with a second shot, dropping another gunner before the hostiles could adjust. The convoy vehicles broke formation, scattering to make themselves harder targets. Smart tactical adjustment. They'd expected resistance, but not this level of coordination. Mara watched through binoculars as a commander, not the one they'd killed, someone new stepping into the vacuum, started directing his forces with hand signals. Professional recovery. These weren't mercenaries rattled by initial casualties. They were adapting. Liu, Mara transmitted. They're pushing toward your obstacles. Prepare to activate. Standing by. The lead vehicle, an armored truck with reinforced plating, accelerated toward the north approach, where Liu had positioned concrete barriers in a pattern that looked random but created a natural funnel. The truck hit the first barrier, slowed, adjusted course toward what appeared to be an opening. Now, Mara said. Liu triggered the charges. Not explosives. They couldn't risk civilian casualties from debris, but hydraulic systems repurposed from construction equipment. The barrier shifted, closing the funnel, trapping the truck between concrete walls too narrow for maneuvering. The truck's driver tried to reverse. Too late. Defenders on the northern line concentrated fire on the trapped vehicle, rounds punching through windows, shredding tires. The truck lurched to a stop, smoke pouring from the engine compartment. 4 combatants died trying to evacuate. The 5th made it to cover, wounded and desperate. Mara counted. 7 down, 45 remaining. The hostile commander was screaming orders now, voice barely audible over gunfire. His forces regrouped, pulling back to effective range, establishing their own firing positions. The initial assault had failed. Now came the professional approach: suppression, advancement under covering fire, systematic breach. "Henderson," Mara transmitted, "rotate south team to reinforce west approach. They're going to probe for weak points." "Copy. Moving personnel now." A mortar round arced over the perimeter wall, impacted in the courtyard between buildings. The explosion was deafening, sending dirt and debris skyward. A second round followed, landing closer to the main building. They were ranging shots, finding elevation and distance. "Carson, can you identify the mortar position?" "Scanning. Got it. 400 meters south-southwest, 2-man team behind that rock formation. Take them." Carson shifted position, adjusted his rifle. The first shot missed. Wind correction error. The second found the spotter, dropping him cleanly. The third round was intercepted by return fire from the hostile convoy, forcing Carson to duck behind the roof's protective barrier. But the mortar fire stopped. The remaining crew member had abandoned his position, prioritizing survival over mission objectives. Mara's tactical display showed defender positions holding steady. No casualties yet. But ammunition was depleting faster than projected, and the hostiles were settling into siege posture. They'd trade time for attrition, wear down the defenders through sustained pressure. Her radio crackled. Strand's voice calling from whatever operations center was monitoring this disaster. "Whiskey 3-7, status report. Engaged, 7 hostiles down, 0 friendly casualties. They're transitioning to sustained assault. Relief force ETA is now 8 hours. Weather conditions deteriorated. Can you hold?" 8 hours, double the original estimate. Mara looked at her ammunition counter, mentally calculated rates of fire against remaining rounds. "Negative. We'll be dry in 4 hours at current expenditure rate." "Then reduce expenditure rate." "That means letting them advance unopposed." "Then let them advance and engage at closer range. Make every shot count." Strand paused. "You've held them this long. Keep holding." The transmission cut off before Mara could respond. She resisted the urge to throw the radio off the roof and focused on the tactical situation. Strand was right, much as she hated admitting it. They needed to conserve ammunition, which meant letting the hostiles get closer before engaging, which meant higher risk, closer combat, more opportunities for things to go catastrophically wrong. "All positions," she transmitted, "shift to engagement protocol beta. Hold fire until targets reach 50-meter threshold. Snipers maintain harassment fire on priority targets only." The order went against every defensive instinct. Letting enemies advance felt like losing. But doctrine existed for reasons. Ammunition was finite. Desperation wasn't. The hostile forces tested the new parameters immediately. A 4-man team sprinted from cover toward the eastern wall, moving fast and low. Defenders watched them come, fingers on triggers, waiting for the 50-meter mark. 40 meters. 35. 30. The lead runner was 28 meters from the wall when Henderson's voice cracked across the radio. "Engaging!" Defensive fire erupted from the eastern positions. The 4-man team went down in seconds, caught in overlapping fields of fire with nowhere to hide. Clean kills. Efficient. Exactly what the engagement protocol was designed to produce. But the hostile commander had learned something valuable. The defenders weren't firing until close range, which meant he could position his forces at 60 meters and suppress defensive positions without taking casualties. Mara watched him implement the adjustment, saw his forces spreading into a perimeter just outside effective engagement range, establishing a siege line that would slowly contract while minimizing his losses. Smart, disciplined, exactly what she would have done in his position. Her shoulder was screaming now, the wound seeping through bandages despite the compression wrap. She needed real medical attention, needed rest, needed a situation that wasn't a tactical nightmare with no good solutions. Instead, she got Reeves' voice on the radio, tight with tension. Whiskey 3-7, we have movement inside the perimeter. Southwest maintenance access. Someone bypassed external defenses. Mara's blood went cold. How many? Thermal shows 4, maybe 5. They're inside the wire, moving toward the main building. Henderson, seal internal corridors. Lock down patient wings. Reeves, take your position and intercept. I'm moving to support. Mara rolled off the roof access, descended the stairwell 3 steps at a time, her wounded shoulder protesting with every jarring impact. She'd been so focused on external threats that she'd missed the possibility of infiltration. Classic mistake. The kind that got people killed. The Southwest maintenance access was a service entrance designed for equipment delivery, barely secured because it required navigating underground tunnels that weren't on standard facility maps. But someone had done their homework. Someone knew the facility's layout well enough to exploit weaknesses Mara hadn't considered. She reached the ground floor, moved through corridors with weapon raised, clearing corners by instinct. Behind her, she could hear defensive fire continuing outside, Henderson's team holding the perimeter while internal security collapsed. Reeves's voice crackled. Contact. Southwest Corridor, Section 3. Engaging. Gunfire echoed through the building's interior. Short bursts. Professional shooting. Mara ran toward the sound, ignoring her shoulder, ignoring exhaustion, focused only on reaching Reeves before the infiltrators reached the patient wings. She rounded a corner and nearly collided with a hostile combatant backing away from Reeves's position. The man spun, bringing his weapon up. Mara was faster. 2 rounds center mass. He went down hard. Ahead, Reeves was pinned behind a corner, trading fire with at least 2 more hostiles. Mara moved to flanking position, using a doorway for cover, and opened fire from the new angle. Caught between 2 defenders, the infiltrators made a choice. They retreated deeper into the building instead of standing and fighting. Wrong choice. They were moving away from their exit and toward areas where they'd be trapped. Mara advanced, Reeves moving parallel on the opposite corridor. They converged on the infiltrators at a junction near the medical wing entrance, where the hostiles had taken cover behind overturned furniture. "Surrender," Mara called out. "You're cut off. No exit, no support." One of them answered in accented English. "We didn't come here to surrender." He threw something, grenade, small and metallic. Mara dove sideways as it detonated, flash bang instead of fragmentation. White light and concussive force that left her ears ringing and vision starred. Through the disorientation, she saw the infiltrators moving, charging their position while defenders were blind and deaf. Training overrode panic. Mara fired blind, spraying rounds at approximate enemy positions, adjusting by sound when her vision started clearing. 1 infiltrator went down. A second staggered, hit but still mobile. Reeves had recovered faster, was engaging the remaining 2 with controlled bursts. 1 dropped. The last made it into the medical wing, smashing through doors, heading toward the patient areas, toward Dr. Chen, toward the vulnerable ones who couldn't fight back. Mara ran. Her shoulder felt like it was tearing apart from the inside. Her vision tunneled. Didn't matter. She'd failed to protect her team at Kandahar. She wasn't failing here. The infiltrator had reached the medical wing's central corridor, was moving room to room, searching. Mara caught up as he kicked open a door to what looked like a therapy room. Inside, 3 patients were huddled against the wall. Morrison, Patterson, Davis. The volunteers who'd wanted to fight but had been assigned to backup positions. The infiltrator raised his weapon. Morrison raised his first. Both men fired simultaneously. Morrison's round hit the hostile in the chest. Center mass, perfect shot. The hostile's rounds went wide, punching through ceiling tiles. He collapsed, weapon clattering across the floor. Mara reached the doorway, weapon trained, ready to finish what Morrison had started. But it wasn't necessary. The infiltrator was down, bleeding out, eyes already glazing. Morrison was shaking, staring at the body. "I killed him." "You defended yourself," Mara said. "That's different." "Is it?" She didn't have an answer. Killing was killing, whether the justification made it legal or moral or necessary. The math was always the same. Someone died and you lived and you carried that weight forever. Patterson moved to the body, checked for pulse, found none. "He's gone." Mara keyed her radio. "Henderson, internal infiltration neutralized. 5 hostiles down inside the building. Seal all maintenance access points. They know about the tunnels. Sealing now. External situation deteriorating. They're massing for another push. Hold them. I'm returning to command position. She left Morrison and the others in the therapy room, moved back toward the central stairwell. Her tablet buzzed. Message from Strand. Hostile reinforcements detected. Second convoy approaching from northwest. ETA 90 minutes. Total combined force approximately 80 combatants. 80. Against defenders who were already running low on ammunition and fighting off exhaustion. Mara stopped in the stairwell, leaned against the wall, closed her eyes. This was Kandahar again. Different location, different people, same impossible math, not enough resources, not enough time, too many enemies and not enough miracles. Her radio crackled, Dr. Chen's voice, calm despite circumstances. Mara, I need you in the basement, now. I'm needed on... now. It's urgent. Mara changed direction, descended to the basement level where the most vulnerable patients had been secured. The space was reinforced concrete, minimal windows, designed as a fallback shelter if everything else failed. 11 patients were there, plus 2 medical staff monitoring their condition. Doctor. Chen met her at the entrance. We have a problem. Another one? One of the patients, Richard Vance, he's having a psychotic break. Believes the attack is a personal assassination attempt. He's armed himself with a scalpel and is threatening anyone who approaches. Mara rubbed her face with her good hand. Where is he? Southeast corner, behind those storage shelves. He's lucid enough to be dangerous, but not lucid enough to be reasoned with. Have you tried sedation? He won't let anyone close enough, and forcing it could trigger violent response that endangers other patients. Mara moved toward the southeast corner, weapon lowered but ready. She could see Vance now, mid-30s, thin, eyes wild with paranoia and fear. He was holding the scalpel like a knife, tracking movement, ready to strike at anything perceived as threat. Richard, Mara said quietly. It's Mara Hale. We met 2 years ago when I was a patient here. Do you remember? Vance's eyes locked onto her. They sent you. You're one of them. I'm not. I'm here to protect everyone in this facility, including you. Lies. Everyone lies. They said I was safe here, said I could heal, but they found me anyway. His hand tightened on the scalpel. I won't let them take me. I won't go back. Mara took a slow step forward. No one's taking you anywhere. The people attacking this facility are after someone else. You're safe here. Safe? Vance laughed, sharp and bitter. Nothing's safe. Nowhere is safe. The only safety is making sure they can't hurt you first. Another step. Mara kept her voice level, non-threatening. Richard, I understand. I know what it feels like when the world stops making sense and everyone looks like an enemy. I've been there. I still go there sometimes, but right now I need you to trust me, just for a few minutes. Can you do that? Why should I trust you? Because I'm still here. I could have run, could have evacuated with the staff, but I stayed. Because these people matter, because you matter. Vance's hand wavered. I matter? Yes. They told me I was broken, useless, just taking up space. Whoever told you that was wrong. You're here. You're alive. That means you survived something that tried to kill you. That's not useless. That's strength. Tears were running down Vance's face now. I'm so tired of being strong. I know, but just a little longer. Help me keep everyone here safe, and then you can rest, I promise. He lowered the scalpel slowly, hand shaking. Promise? I promise. Vance dropped the blade. It clattered on the concrete floor, and he collapsed against the wall, sobbing. Dr. Chen moved in immediately with sedation, administered quickly while Vance was compliant. Within seconds, he was unconscious, breathing steady. Chen looked at Mara. That was well done. That was lucky. 5 minutes earlier, before I'd killed someone and remembered what trauma feels like, I might have handled it differently. But you didn't. You saw him. Really saw him. That's a skill most people never learn. Mara picked up the scalpel, handed it to Chen. How many others are close to breaking? 3, maybe 4. The gunfire outside is triggering acute stress responses. If this continues much longer, it won't. One way or another, this ends in the next few hours. She returned to the main floor, where the situation had deteriorated exactly as predicted. The hostile siege line had contracted to 30 meters, suppressive fire constant now, defenders burning through ammunition just to keep them from advancing further. Henderson found her near the command post. We're at 40% ammunition reserves, maybe 3 hours of sustained engagement left. The relief force won't be here for another 7 hours. Minimum. Then we're not holding this position for 7 hours. Henderson's expression was grim. We need to consider evacuation protocols. Evacuate to where? They've got the perimeter locked down. Anyone who leaves this building gets cut down in the open. So we wait here until we're out of bullets, and then what? Surrender? Fight them hand to hand? Mara looked out the window at the hostile positions. Disciplined. Patient. They knew the math as well as she did. Time was their weapon now. Her tablet buzzed. She expected another message from Strand, probably with more bad news. Instead, it was a notification from Facility Security Systems. Incoming aircraft. Multiple signatures. 3 helicopters approaching from the southeast. Relief force. 8 hours early. Mara keyed her radio to Strand's frequency. Confirm relief force deployment. We're showing 3 aircraft inbound. Silence. Then Strand's voice, confused. Negative. Relief force hasn't launched yet. Those aren't ours. The helicopters crested the mountain ridge, came into visual range. Not military markings, private contractors. And they were descending toward the hostile siege line, not the facility. Reinforcements. For the enemy. Mara watched as the helicopters landed, disgorged personnel, at least 20 more combatants, fresh and equipped. The hostile commander was gesturing, organizing his expanded force, preparing for overwhelming assault. 100 combatants now, against defenders who had 3 hours of ammunition left. Henderson stood beside her, watching. We're not walking away from this. No, Mara agreed. We're not. So what do we do? Mara thought about Kandahar, about calling for air support and watching it arrive too late, about the weight of surviving when better people didn't. She thought about Coldwater, about the moment she'd stopped being invisible and remembered what she was capable of when people's lives depended on it. She thought about Morrison's shaking hands after he'd killed the infiltrator, about Vance's terror, about 47 people who'd come here to heal and found themselves in a war zone instead. And she made the choice that had been inevitable since the moment Strand had pulled her onto that helicopter. Henderson, gather every patient who volunteered for defense. I need them armed and positioned in 30 minutes. They're not combat ready. They'll fight because the alternative is dying, and I'd rather give them a chance to fight than watch them get executed by professionals. Mara turned to face him. This facility is full of people everyone wrote off, broken, damaged, useless. But we're still here, still breathing, and if these bastards want to finish what trauma started, they're going to have to earn it. Henderson stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. I'll gather them. And Henderson? Tell them the truth. We're outnumbered, outgunned, out of time. They need to know what they're choosing. They already know. That's why they volunteered. He left. Mara returned to the command position, pulled up tactical displays, began planning final defensive positions. Not positions designed to repel assault. Positions designed to extract maximum casualties before the inevitable breakthrough. Reeves joined her. You're planning to make them pay. I'm planning to make sure every person who dies today gets avenged 10 times over. That's not strategy. That's rage. Sometimes rage is all you have left. Carson appeared, rifle slung across his back. Hostile forces are massing. They're preparing for coordinated assault, simultaneous breach on 3 sides, overwhelming force. Finish this fast. When? 30 minutes, maybe less. Mara checked her watch. 0847 hours. In 30 minutes, 100 combatants would hit this facility with everything they had. And when the shooting stopped, most of the people she was trying to protect would be dead. Unless she changed the equation. Her tablet showed facility schematics, including systems she hadn't considered before. Infrastructure, utilities, the foundation that made the buildings functional. Carson, Liu, Michaels, Reeves, conference room. Now. They assembled quickly. Mara pulled up the schematics on the main display. The facility has emergency generators in the sub-basement, diesel fuel tanks holding approximately 10,000 gallons. If we rupture those tanks and create an ignition source, Reeves saw where she was going. You want to blow the sub-basement. I want to create a defensive perimeter they can't cross. The main building sits on the highest ground in the facility. If we destroy everything around it and create a fire barrier, they'll have to come through flames to reach us. It won't stop them, but it'll slow them down and reduce their tactical options. Liu frowned. That's a last resort option. We'd be destroying the facility to save it. The facility's already lost. Buildings can be rebuilt. People can't. What about the patients in the basement? Carson asked. We move them to ground floor before detonation. Evacuate everyone from sub-basement and basement levels. Once they're clear, we trigger the tanks remotely and fall back to upper floors. Michaels spoke for the first time in hours. You're turning this into Alamo scenario. Last stand. Maximum attrition. I'm turning this into a situation where we survive long enough for actual relief to arrive, or we die making sure these bastards regret taking this contract. Mara looked at each of them. I'm not ordering this. I'm proposing it. If anyone has a better option, I'm listening. Silence. Then Reeves nodded. I'm in. Carson followed. In. Liu hesitated, then, in. Michaels smiled grimly. Wouldn't miss it. Mara keyed her radio. Henderson, prepare to evacuate all personnel from basement and sub-basement levels. Move them to ground floor east wing. We're implementing contingency protocol Gamma. Gamma wasn't in the briefing. Because I just invented it. Execute now. The next 20 minutes were controlled chaos. Patients moved from basement to ground level, medical equipment hastily relocated, defensive positions adjusted to account for the new configuration. Dr. Chen coordinated the medical evacuation, while Mara and her team descended to the sub-basement. The diesel tanks were exactly where the schematics indicated, massive cylindrical containers holding enough fuel to run generators for weeks. Liu placed shaped charges at structural weak points, set for remote detonation. How much blast radius? Mara asked. If these tanks go up, 200 meters. Everything within that radius becomes an inferno. Anyone caught inside won't make it out. Can we control the direction of the blast? Partially. I can direct most of the force outward, away from the main building. But there'll be blowback. Upper floors might be compromised. Do it. We need maximum defensive effect. Liu finished placing charges, ran detonation cable to a remote trigger. Ready. Just say the word. They returned to ground level, sealed the sub-basement access. Outside, the hostile forces were completing their assault preparation. Mara could see them through windows, organized into 3 teams, each positioned at a different breach point, waiting for the coordinated signal. Her radio crackled. The hostile commander's voice, amplified through megaphone. Final warning. Surrender in 60 seconds, or we come in shooting. Everyone dies. Your choice. Mara picked up her own megaphone, moved to a window where he could see her. You came here expecting easy targets, found out differently. Now you're escalating because your pride can't handle losing 15 men to defenders you thought were helpless. She paused. Here's my counteroffer. Leave now, take your remaining forces and walk away. Because if you breach this facility, I promise you won't leave alive. Laughter from the hostile position. Big words from someone who's surrounded and outnumbered 5-1. Numbers don't mean much when you're fighting people who have nothing left to lose. Then you'll die with nothing. Maybe, but you'll die first. The hostile commander lowered his megaphone, turned to his forces, gave the signal. They advanced on all 3 breach points simultaneously, coordinated, professional, exactly as Mara had predicted. 50 meters, 40, 30. She keyed her radio. All positions, open fire. Defensive fire erupted from every prepared position. The advancing hostiles took casualties immediately, 6 down in the first 10 seconds. But they kept coming, using covering fire and tactical movement, closing the distance despite losses. 20 meters. 15. Liu, Mara transmitted, trigger charges. Executing. The sub-basement detonated with a roar that shook the entire facility. The diesel tanks ruptured, fuel igniting instantaneously, blast force directed outward by Liu's carefully placed charges. The ground around the main building erupted in flames, a wall of fire 200 meters across, consuming everything within reach. 12 hostile combatants were caught in the blast radius. They died screaming, flames turning them into human torches. The remaining forces fell back, regrouping beyond the fire perimeter, staring at the inferno in shock. The hostile commander's voice returned on the megaphone, rage replacing confidence. "You just killed your own facility," Mara responded calmly. "I killed your assault plan. Now you have a choice. Wait for the fire to burn out and try again with reduced forces. Or leave while you still can." "We're not leaving." "Then welcome to hell." The fire burned for 40 minutes, creating a barrier that made direct assault impossible. The hostile forces tried flanking maneuvers, probing for weak points in the flames. Found none. Liu's placement had been perfect. Complete coverage, no gaps large enough for personnel to navigate safely. But fire was temporary. Eventually, fuel sources depleted, flames diminished, and the barrier became crossable again. When that happened, the defenders would face the same overwhelming numbers with even less ammunition. Mara watched the flames, calculated time remaining, maybe 2 hours before they could advance again. The relief force was still 5 hours out minimum. Her tablet buzzed. Strand's voice, tight with barely controlled fury. "What the hell did you just do?" "Created defensive advantage with available resources." "You destroyed a multi-million-dollar facility." "I saved 47 lives. The facility can be rebuilt." "That wasn't your decision to make." "Yes, it was." "Yes. You gave me tactical authority. I used it." Strand was silent for a long moment. Then, "Relief force has been bumped to priority status. New ETA 3 hours. Hold until then." "We'll hold." The transmission ended. Mara lowered the tablet, looked around at the defenders watching her. Henderson, Reeves, Morrison, and the other volunteers. People who'd been written off as broken, useless liabilities. People who'd just proved everyone wrong. Dr. Chen appeared carrying medical supplies. "We have wounded. Nothing critical yet, but that'll change when they breach the fire line." "How are the patients holding up?" "Better than expected. Some are struggling, but most are channeling fear into purpose. They needed to feel useful. You gave them that." "I gave them a war zone." "You gave them a chance to fight back against something that's been hunting them for years. Trauma, helplessness. The belief that they're nothing but victims." Chen set down the supplies. "For some of them, this is the most alive they've felt since they entered treatment. That's a terrible thing to say. It's an honest thing to say. These people have been fighting invisible enemies their entire lives. At least now the enemy has a face and can be shot at." Mara couldn't argue. She'd felt the same rush earlier when the infiltrator had threatened Morrison, and she'd remembered what it felt like to protect instead of just survive. The flames were diminishing now. Smoke rose in thick columns, obscuring sightlines but also providing cover. The hostile commander was reorganizing his forces, adapting to the new terrain. Patient, professional. He'd lost 28 combatants total, more than half his original force. But reinforcements had arrived, bringing fresh personnel and renewed determination. He could afford to be patient now. Mara's shoulder had gone from screaming pain to dull numbness. Not a good sign. Nerve damage, probably. She'd need surgery eventually, assuming she survived long enough to reach a surgical suite. Henderson approached. "Ammunition status update. We're at 22%. If they hit us hard when the fire clears, we've got maybe 40 minutes of defensive fire left. Then we make 40 minutes count. And after that? After that, we improvise." Her radio crackled. Not Strand this time. A different voice, female, familiar. "Whiskey 37, this is Guardian 6. We're 10 minutes out with air support. Mark your position." Mara's heart jumped. Guardian 6 was Major Rachel Kincaid, former colleague, current Special Operations Commander, someone who'd been at Kandahar and understood exactly what Mara had lost there. Guardian 6, marked position is the main building surrounded by flames. Hostile forces, approximately 72 combatants, positioned in siege configuration around fire perimeter. "Copy that. We're coming in hot. Keep your heads down." The sound of rotor blades cut through the morning air. Not 3 helicopters this time. 6. Military gunships with full armament descending fast and angry. The hostile commander saw them coming, tried to reposition his forces. Too late. The gunships opened fire with devastating precision, mounted cannons tearing through hostile positions, rockets impacting vehicle clusters, suppressive fire so intense that the siege line disintegrated in seconds. Hostile combatants scattered, running for whatever cover they could find. Some made it, most didn't. The gunship circled, methodically eliminating targets, turning professional assault force into panicked retreat. 3 minutes. That's how long it took for 72 combatants to become 17 survivors running for their lives. Mara watched from the window, felt something loosen in her chest. Not relief. Not yet. But the beginning of something that might become relief eventually. The gunships continued circling while transport helicopters landed outside the fire perimeter. Troops deployed. Actual military, not contractors, establishing secure perimeter, collecting hostile survivors, rendering medical aid to defenders. Henderson stood beside her, staring. They came. They came, Mara agreed. We held. We held. He started laughing. Exhausted, slightly hysterical laughter that came from surviving something impossible. Mara joined him because the alternative was crying, and she'd cried enough for one lifetime. Major Kincaid entered the building 20 minutes later, flanked by security personnel. She was 40-something, gray streaking her dark hair, eyes that had seen every kind of combat and remained unimpressed by all of it. When she saw Mara, she stopped. You look like hell. Feel worse. You destroyed an entire facility. Saved 47 lives doing it. Kincaid smiled. Fair trade. She moved closer, lowered her voice. Strand's furious. He wanted you to hold quietly, not turn this into a headline-making disaster. Strand wanted me to be a weapon. Weapons cause damage. He got what he asked for. True. Kincaid glanced around at the defenders, at the patients who'd volunteered, at the building still standing despite everything. For what it's worth, what you did here, it matters. These people matter. Tell that to the review board that's inevitably coming. Oh, there'll be a review, probably several, but you've got something Strand doesn't. What's that? Witnesses, 47 people who'll testify you saved their lives. Against that, his complaints about property damage won't mean much. Mara wanted to believe that. Wanted to think witnesses and testimony mattered more than bureaucratic fury and budget overruns. But she'd been through enough reviews to know better. Kincaid must have seen the doubt on her face because she added, Also, I'm filing the after-action report, and my report will emphasize that you operated under impossible circumstances with limited resources and achieved mission success despite hostile numerical superiority. Strand can file whatever complaints he wants. My report goes to people who actually understand combat operations. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You've still got 17 hostile survivors in custody, and some of them are talking. Turns out this wasn't just a revenge operation. There's something bigger happening. What do you mean? Kincaid pulled out her tablet, showed Mara interrogation transcripts. The hostile commander, the one you killed at Coldwater, he was working for an organization called the Nexus Group. Private military contractor, but with political connections. They've been targeting rehabilitation facilities like this one across 3 countries. Why? Because the facilities house former operators who know things, classified information, strategic intelligence. The Nexus Group was hired to eliminate anyone who might compromise certain interests. Kincaid scrolled through more documents. And here's where it gets interesting. The person who hired them? Someone with access to classified personnel files. Someone who knew exactly which operators were in which facilities. Mara's blood went cold. Someone inside our own command structure. Exactly. We've got a leak, high level, and whoever it is has been systematically targeting people like you, operators who were forced out, damaged, considered expendable. Kincaid closed the tablet. You weren't being paranoid at Coldwater. They really were coming for you. And this facility, and probably a dozen others. Does Strand know? He knows now. He's less furious about property damage and more interested in finding whoever sold out his personnel. Kincaid paused. Which brings me to why I'm really here. We need your help identifying the leak. I've been inactive for 2 years. I don't have access to... You have access to something better. You know these people. The operators in facilities like this. You know their stories, their missions, what they might know that's worth killing for. Kincaid met her eyes. Mara, someone is hunting your people, and you're the only one positioned to figure out why before they succeed. Mara looked around the building, at the patients who'd fought alongside her, at Henderson's exhausted security team, at the facility that had become a fortress because there was no other choice. When do we start? She asked. Kincaid smiled. As soon as you get that shoulder properly treated and sleep for at least 8 hours. I can manage 6. 8. That's an order. Medical personnel arrived, began processing defenders for evacuation and treatment. Dr. Chen coordinated patient care, ensuring everyone received appropriate attention. Morrison was sitting against a wall, staring at his hands. Hands that had killed someone today. Mara sat beside him. You did what you had to do, she said. I know, doesn't make it easier. It's not supposed to be easy. The day it becomes easy is the day you're broken beyond repair. Morrison looked at her. Are you broken beyond repair? I don't know yet. Ask me after the next review board hearing. He laughed weakly. Fair enough. Mara stood, offered him a hand. He took it, let her pull him up. Thank you, Morrison said, for giving us a chance to fight. You gave yourselves that chance. I just didn't stop you. She left him with the medical team, found Dr. Chen organizing patient transfers to secure transport. Everyone's accounted for? Mara asked. Everyone. 0 fatalities among patients and staff. 4 security personnel wounded, none critical. Chen looked at the destroyed facility. We'll need to find them new accommodations. I'll make sure it happens. Will you? Mara understood the question beneath the question. Would she stay involved? Would she commit to seeing this through? Or would she disappear again, retreat into invisibility, pretend today never happened? I'm staying, she said. There are people hunting us. People inside our own systems. I'm going to find them and make sure they can't hurt anyone else. Chen smiled. Good. These people need someone who understands them, someone who won't treat them like broken equipment that needs to be discarded. I'm just as broken as they are. Exactly. That's why you're perfect for this. Strand arrived via helicopter an hour later, landed outside the smoldering remains of the sub-basement. He found Mara in the medical triage area, getting her shoulder properly bandaged by a field surgeon. We need to talk, he said. Talk. Privately. The surgeon finished wrapping, gave Mara a prescription for antibiotics and pain medication. She stood, followed Strand to a makeshift command post set up in one of the surviving outbuildings. Inside, Strand turned on her with barely controlled fury. Do you have any idea what you've done? Saved 47 lives. You destroyed a facility worth $40 million. You created an international incident. You've put my entire operation under congressional review. Your operation put me in an impossible situation with inadequate resources and expected miracles. I delivered what I could with what I had. You were supposed to hold quietly, defensive posture, minimal engagement, wait for relief. They brought 100 combatants. If I'd held quietly, everyone would be dead. Strand slammed his hand on the table. This isn't about tactics. This is about you proving you're still the same reckless operator who got our entire team killed at Kandahar. The words hung in the air like poison. Mara stood perfectly still, hands at her sides, face blank. Say that again. You heard me. Kandahar. 16 went in, 4 came out. That's your track record. And now you've cost me a facility, dozens of personnel injuries, and political fallout that'll take months to contain. I followed your orders. You activated me, put me in command, gave me tactical authority. I gave you authority to defend, not to wage war. What exactly do you think defense looks like when you're outnumbered and outgunned? Strand opened his mouth to respond, stopped. Because Major Kincaid had entered the room, followed by 2 officers Mara didn't recognize, but whose rank insignia suggested they outranked everyone present. Mr. Strand, Kincaid said coolly, I believe you're out of line. This is my operation. This was your operation. As of 20 minutes ago, it became a joint task force investigation under military oversight. She gestured to the officers. These gentlemen are here to conduct formal inquiry into the security breach that led to today's assault. They'll want your full cooperation. Strand's face went pale. Security breach? The hostile forces had detailed intelligence on facility layout, personnel rosters, and defensive capabilities. That information came from classified databases. Someone gave it to them. Kincaid's expression hardened. Someone with access to your systems. You're suggesting. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating facts. The investigation will determine culpability. She turned to Mara. Operator Hale is being commended for her actions today. She operated under extreme circumstances and achieved mission success with 0 friendly fatalities. Her tactical decisions will be reviewed, but preliminary assessment indicates she performed within acceptable parameters. Strand stared at Mara, then at Kincaid, then back to Mara. This isn't over, he said. No, Mara agreed. It's not. Because whoever sold out these people is still out there, still planning, still hunting, and I'm going to find them. She walked out before he could respond, leaving Strand to face the review officers alone. Outside, the sun was fully up now, burning away the morning haze. Evacuation helicopters were loading the last of the patients. Medical teams worked efficiently, professional despite exhaustion. Reeves found her near the landing zone. We did good today. We survived today? That's different from good. Survival is good when the alternative is death. Mara couldn't argue that. She watched the helicopters lift off, carrying people who'd been through hell and somehow come out breathing, not whole, probably never whole again, but alive. That had to count for something. Her tablet buzzed one last time. Message from an unknown number. You made a mistake today. Should have died with the others. Now you're a problem we need to solve. Mara showed the message to Reeves. Looks like someone's unhappy. Looks like someone just painted a target on themselves. Threatening you after what you did today? That's stupid. Or desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. You think you can find them? I know I can, because they're going to come for me again, and next time I'll be ready. She kept staring at the message, reading the threat over and over until the words stopped meaning anything beyond their fundamental truth. Someone wanted her dead badly enough to announce it. Reeves gestured toward the departing helicopters. Come on, medical evac is waiting for you. That shoulder needs surgery, not field dressing. Surgery can wait. I need to talk to the captured hostiles first. I need answers more than I need medical attention. Mara started walking toward the detention area where military police had secured the 17 survivors. Someone just threatened me. That means they're watching, which means they're close enough to matter. The detention area was a reinforced tent structure guarded by armed personnel. Inside, the captured hostiles sat in restraints, separated into individual sections. Most looked defeated. A few looked defiant. One, a younger man with a bandaged leg, looked terrified. Major Kincaid was already inside, reviewing interrogation notes. She looked up when Mara entered. You should be getting medical treatment. So I've been told. What have they given you? Kincaid pulled up her tablet. Not much. Most of them are claiming they were just following orders, didn't know specifics about the target beyond neutralize all personnel at the facility. Standard contractor defense were just soldiers doing a job. Except soldiers have rules of engagement. They were executing civilians. They know that, which is why most of them are hoping cooperation will reduce their sentences. Kincaid scrolled through transcripts. But there's one who's been completely silent since capture. Hasn't said a word, hasn't requested legal representation, just sits there staring at the wall. Show me. Kincaid led her to the far section where a man in his 40s sat motionless, hands cuffed, eyes fixed on nothing. He had the bearing of someone who'd spent decades in military service, posture perfect despite restraints, face expressionless despite circumstances. Mara studied him through the transparent barrier. Something about him felt familiar. Not his face. She'd never seen him before, but the way he held himself. The controlled stillness that came from operating in situations where any movement could be fatal. What's his name? Mara asked. Won't give one. No identification on him. Fingerprints aren't in any database we can access. Which means he's been scrubbed, deep cover operative or someone who paid very well to disappear from official records. Mara moved closer to the barrier. Either way, he's not standard contractor. He's something else. The man's eyes shifted slightly, noticed her watching. Recognition flickered across his face, brief, controlled, quickly suppressed. He knew her. Mara keyed the intercom. "You know who I am." The man said nothing. "You recognized me the moment I walked in, which means you've seen my file, which means whoever hired you gave you detailed intelligence on targets." She paused. "Including me specifically." Still nothing, but his jaw tightened fractionally. "Here's what I know," Mara continued. "The Nexus Group doesn't hire operators of your caliber for standard contracts. You're expensive, specialized. The kind of asset reserved for high-value, high-risk operations. So whoever hired your team didn't just want this facility destroyed, they wanted it done by the best, which suggests they knew there'd be resistance." The man's eyes tracked to Kincaid, back to Mara. "They knew I'd be here," Mara said. "That's why they sent you, not to eliminate random operators in a rehabilitation facility, to eliminate me specifically, along with anyone who might piece together what I'd figured out." The man spoke for the first time. His voice was rough, accent suggesting Eastern European origin. "You figured out nothing. I figured out that someone inside our command structure has been selling classified information to private contractors. Information about operator locations, capabilities, vulnerabilities. And I figured out that the attacks on rehabilitation facilities weren't random. They were targeted eliminations of people who knew too much." "Proof?" "I'm working on it. But you're going to help me." The man smiled without humor. "I don't think so." "You will. Because right now you're facing multiple counts of attempted murder, assault on a protected facility, and conspiracy to commit terrorist acts. That's life imprisonment minimum, possibly execution depending on how prosecutors want to play it." Mara leaned closer to the intercom. "But if you cooperate, provide names, documentation, evidence of who hired you and why, then you become a witness instead of a defendant. Reduce sentence, possibly even protection." "Protection," the man laughed. "From who? The people who hired us have reach you can't imagine. Military, intelligence, private sector, they're everywhere. No protection saves me if I talk." "Then you're dead either way. Might as well take them down with you." The man was quiet for a long moment. Then he leaned forward slightly, voice dropping. "The person who contracted us goes by the designation architect. No real name, no direct contact. Everything runs through encrypted channels and dead drops. We were given target packages with comprehensive intelligence, facility layouts, personnel rosters, defensive capabilities, even psychological profiles of key targets." "Including mine?" "Especially yours. The architect wanted you eliminated first. Said you were the greatest threat to operational security." He paused. "Said you'd already started asking questions at Coldwater, questions that would eventually lead to uncomfortable answers." Mara's mind raced. She hadn't asked questions at Coldwater. She'd been deliberately invisible, avoiding anything that might draw attention, unless— "Captain Renner," she said. "His mission in Helmand Province. He saw something." The man nodded fractionally. "The architect's operations extend into theater, supply chains, equipment procurement. Renner's team stumbled onto evidence of systematic fraud, military equipment being diverted to private contractors, billions in missing materiel. And Renner was sent to Coldwater specifically, where he would eventually be eliminated along with other problematic witnesses. The architect wanted it to look like a random attack, mercenaries targeting a soft military installation. No one would question it. Except I was there, and I complicated things. You destroyed things, killed the primary assault team, forced deployment of secondary assets, made this entire operation visible when it was supposed to be invisible." The man smiled grimly. "The architect is very unhappy with you." Kincaid had been recording everything. She spoke now, voice hard. "This architect. How do we identify them?" "You don't. That's the point. The architect maintains complete operational separation. We've never met them, never heard their real voice. Everything is filtered through intermediaries and encrypted systems." "Then how do they pay you?" "Cryptocurrency transfers through layered accounts, untraceable." "Nothing's untraceable," Mara said. "There's always a thread, always a mistake. We just need to find it." The man leaned back, expression neutral again. Good luck. People have been trying to identify the architect for 3 years. No one's succeeded. Because no one had the right motivation. I do. She turned to leave, but the man called out. One more thing. The architect's next target package was already distributed before we deployed here. Another facility, another group of operators who know too much. Mara stopped. Where? I don't know. That information wasn't in our briefing, but the timeline suggested imminent action. Days, not weeks. Kincaid immediately pulled out her phone, started making calls. Mara returned to the intercom. Thank you for cooperating. The man shrugged. I'm a professional. The contract's broken. The architect won't honor payment for failed operations, so I have no loyalty left to protect. Mercenary to the end. Soldier to the end. Mercenary is just what they call us when the government stops paying. He met her eyes. You were one of us once. Special operations, black budgets, missions that didn't officially exist. The only difference between you and me is which flag we saluted when we woke up. Mara wanted to argue, wanted to draw clear moral lines between military service and contract killing. But he wasn't entirely wrong. She'd killed people for her government. He killed people for money. The dead probably didn't care about the distinction. The difference, she said quietly, is I stopped. You didn't. You stopped because they broke you. I continued because they didn't. He leaned forward again. But we're both broken now, aren't we? Just in different ways. She left before he could see that his words had landed. Outside, Kincaid was coordinating with multiple agencies, trying to identify which rehabilitation facility might be the architect's next target. Mara listened to fragments of conversation, facility names, security assessments, timelines. Reeves appeared, carrying medical supplies. Sit down. I'm checking that shoulder whether you want me to or not. Mara sat. Reeves unwrapped the field dressing, examined the wound with professional efficiency. It's infected. You need antibiotics and proper surgical closure. Add it to the list. I'm serious. You keep pushing like this, you'll lose function in that arm permanently. Then I'll learn to shoot left-handed. Reeves sighed, began cleaning the wound with antiseptic that stung like concentrated fire. You're impossible. I'm focused. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, you look like someone running from something instead of toward something. Mara didn't answer. Reeves might be right. Hard to tell the difference sometimes between pursuit and flight when you were moving fast enough. Kincaid finished her calls, returned with a tablet showing facility locations. We've identified 3 possibilities based on operator profiles and knowledge overlap. All 3 house personnel who worked on contracts adjacent to the architect's suspected operations. How do we determine which one? We don't. We secure all 3 simultaneously. I'm coordinating with base commanders to deploy protective details immediately. That'll take hours. We don't have hours. Then what do you suggest? Mara studied the tablet, looking at facility locations, personnel rosters, operational histories. One facility stood out, Riverside Recovery Center, located 40 kilometers from a major military logistics hub. The personnel there included former procurement officers, supply chain specialists, people who would understand exactly how billions in equipment could disappear from official inventories. Riverside, Mara said. That's the target. How do you know? Because the Architects Operations Center on supply chain fraud. Riverside houses the people who'd recognize the patterns. They're the biggest threat. She stood despite Reeves's protest. We need to move now. Kincaid checked her watch. I can have a team there in 3 hours. The architect's timeline suggested days, not weeks. 3 hours might be too late. Then we go now. Smaller team, faster deployment. Kincaid started organizing. I'll take operational command. You're coming as tactical advisor, not primary operator. That shoulder makes you a liability in direct engagement. Mara wanted to argue but recognized truth when she heard it. Her shoulder was compromised. She could shoot, could think, could plan. But sustained combat would destroy what little function remained. Agreed. But I want to be there when we find the architect. If we find them? When? They're getting desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. We just need to be ready when they do. The flight to Riverside took 90 minutes in a military transport helicopter. Mara spent the time reviewing everything she knew about the architect: operational patterns, target selection, resource allocation, trying to build a profile from fragments and assumptions. Kincaid sat across from her, similarly focused. You really think we'll find them? I think they'll reveal themselves. They've invested too much in this operation to let it fail completely. When we secure Riverside, they'll have to respond. That response will create exposure. And if they don't respond? If they just cut losses and disappear? Then we've saved lives and disrupted their operation. That's not nothing. The helicopter descended toward Riverside's landing zone. Unlike the rehabilitation facility Mara had just defended, this one showed no signs of distress. Perimeter secure, guards at posts, everything normal, too normal. Mara keyed her radio. Kincaid, something's wrong. Define wrong. This facility should be on high alert. We sent notification an hour ago about potential threats, but I'm seeing standard security posture, no elevated readiness. Kincaid frowned, checked her communications log. Notification was sent through proper channels. Should have reached facility commander 45 minutes ago. Unless someone intercepted it. They landed anyway, deployed with weapons ready. The facility commander met them at the entrance, a colonel in his 50s, looking confused rather than concerned. Major Kincaid, we weren't expecting military presence today. Kincaid's expression hardened. You didn't receive threat notification? What notification? Our communications have been normal all morning. Check your secure channels. Emergency priority message sent at 0847 hours. The colonel pulled out his tablet, accessed secure systems. His face went pale. It's not here. The message never arrived. It was sent. I confirmed transmission. Then someone blocked it before it reached us. The colonel looked around his facility with new understanding. You're saying we're compromised? I'm saying someone very skilled is working very hard to keep you vulnerable. Kincaid turned to her team. Full security sweep. Check all personnel, all systems, all communications. If there's an infiltrator, I want them found. The sweep took 30 minutes. Found nothing. No unauthorized personnel, no compromised systems, no obvious security breaches. But the communication block was real. Someone had intercepted the warning message and prevented it from reaching Riverside, which meant someone was watching their communications in real time. Mara stood in the facility's operations center, staring at communication logs, trying to find the pattern everyone else was missing. The message had been sent through encrypted military channels, should have been completely secure. Unless, Kincaid, who has access to your communication encryption keys? My command staff. Maybe a dozen people total. And Strand? Kincaid paused. He has administrative access to our systems, part of the Joint Task Force coordination. When did he get that access? 3 months ago. Why? Mara pulled up communication timestamps. The first rehabilitation facility attack happened 2.5 months ago, right after Strand got access to encrypted military channels. Ooh, you're suggesting Strand is the architect? I'm suggesting the timing is suspicious, and Strand has been consistently present at every critical juncture, activating me at Coldwater, sending me to the rehabilitation facility, showing up immediately after both attacks. She pulled up more records. He also has access to classified personnel files, procurement systems, logistics databases, everything the architect would need to run this operation. Kincaid stared at the evidence building on screen. This is circumstantial. We need proof. Then we create a situation that forces him to reveal himself. Mara turned to face her. Send another message. Emergency priority. Say we've identified the architect and have physical evidence linking them to the attacks. Say we're transporting that evidence to military intelligence headquarters for formal review. That's a lie. We don't have physical evidence. The architect doesn't know that. If Strand is running this operation, he'll have to respond, either to destroy the evidence or eliminate the witnesses. Either way, he exposes himself. Kincaid considered, then nodded. Do it, but we set a trap. If he comes for the evidence, we'll be waiting. The message was sent through the same encrypted channels. Mara and Kincaid watched transmission logs, waiting for any sign of interception or interference. Nothing happened for 10 minutes. Then 15. Mara was starting to think she'd miscalculated when Kincaid's phone rang. Strand's voice, tense. Major, I need you to hold that evidence transfer. New orders from command. What new orders? I haven't received any. They're coming through now. Stand by for official transmission. Kincaid checked her tablet. No new messages. Sir, I'm not seeing any transmission. It's delayed. Network congestion. Just hold the evidence until I can verify proper chain of custody. With respect, sir, the evidence is time sensitive. We need to move it to secure analysis immediately. Strand's voice hardened. That's not a request, Major. Hold the evidence. That's a direct order. From whose authority? Mine. I'm taking operational command of this investigation as of now. Kincaid met Mara's eyes. They'd gotten their confirmation. Strand was the architect, and he'd just revealed himself trying to prevent evidence that didn't exist from reaching people who might identify him. Understood, sir, Kincaid said smoothly. We'll hold position pending your arrival. I'll be there in 2 hours. Don't move the evidence, don't examine it, don't discuss it with anyone. Is that clear? Crystal clear, sir. The call ended. Kincaid immediately started coordinating with her team. We have 2 hours to prepare. Strand is coming personally, which means he's desperate enough to take direct action. When he arrives, we take him into custody. He won't come alone, Mara said. He's been running this operation for years. He'll have security, probably contractors loyal to him personally. Then we'll be ready for them too. The next 90 minutes were meticulous preparation. Kincaid's team established concealed positions around the facility's main entrance. Military police prepared arrest protocols. Communications were secured through channels Strand couldn't access. Mara positioned herself in the operations center where she could observe without being immediately visible. Her shoulder throbbed with every heartbeat, infection spreading despite antibiotics. She'd need surgery within 24 hours or risk permanent damage. But first, she needed to see this through. Strand arrived exactly on schedule, flanked by 6 security personnel in civilian clothes. Private contractors, just as Mara had predicted. They moved with professional efficiency, establishing perimeter security while Strand entered the facility. Kincaid met him at the entrance. Sir, the evidence is secure. Show me. Of course. This way. She led him toward the operations center. Strand's security detail followed, hands near weapons but not drawn. They knew something was wrong, could feel the tension, but hadn't identified the threat yet. The operations center door opened. Strand entered, saw Mara waiting. His expression didn't change. Operator Hale, surprised to see you here. I'm surprised you came personally, Marcus. Seems like a risk for someone in your position. Someone needs to ensure proper evidence handling. He looked around. Where is it? Where's what? The evidence linking the architect to the attacks. Mara smiled. There is no evidence. We lied. Sent a false message through encrypted channels you shouldn't have been monitoring, and you responded exactly as predicted. Strand's face remained neutral, but something shifted behind his eyes. Calculation, assessment, determining odds. That's not proof of anything. I monitor all operations under my jurisdiction, including yours. You intercepted our warning to Riverside, blocked it from reaching facility security. That's not monitoring. That's active interference. The system must have... Stop. Kincaid stepped into view, weapon drawn but pointed at the floor. We've been recording this conversation. You've already admitted to monitoring encrypted channels beyond your authorization. Add that to the timeline evidence, the access records, and testimony from captured hostiles, identifying operational patterns consistent with your resource access, and we have more than enough for formal investigation. Strand looked at the weapon, at Kincaid, at Mara. His security detail had noticed the drawn weapon, were reaching for their own. Stand down, Strand said quietly. His security detail hesitated. I said stand down. That's an order. They lowered their hands, relaxed fractionally, still ready to move if needed, but following their commander's directive. Strand turned back to Mara. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was not seeing this sooner. You've been systematically eliminating operators who knew about procurement fraud. People who worked on contracts where billions in equipment disappeared. People who might eventually piece together that you were orchestrating the theft. Speculation. No. Deduction based on evidence. The Nexus Group contracts were funded through the same accounts you administered. The target selection matched personnel who'd worked adjacent to your operations, and your response to our false evidence trap proves you're monitoring systems you shouldn't have access to. Mara moved closer. You're the architect. You've been running this operation for years, and now it's over. Strand smiled. It was the coldest expression Mara had ever seen. You think it's over? This operation extends beyond me, beyond this facility, beyond anything you can stop with arrests and investigations. Then tell us, who else is involved? Why would I do that? Because cooperation might reduce your sentence from execution to life imprisonment. Strand laughed. You still don't understand. The people I work with don't allow arrests, don't allow trials. They solve problems permanently. He moved fast, faster than someone his age should have been able to move. His hand went to his jacket pocket, pulled something small and metallic. Kincaid's weapon came up. Freeze! But Strand wasn't drawing a weapon. He was pressing a button on what looked like a phone. The facility's emergency alarms erupted. Every security system triggered simultaneously. Fire alarms, lockdown protocols, evacuation signals. Chaos erupted as personnel responded to multiple conflicting emergencies. Strand's security detail moved, not toward Kincaid or Mara, but toward the exits, creating interference between defenders and their target. Strand ran. Mara pursued despite her injured shoulder, despite exhaustion, despite Kincaid shouting for her to stand down. She followed Strand through corridors filled with confused personnel, past security checkpoints overwhelmed by false alarms, toward the facility's vehicle depot. He had a car waiting, engine running, driver ready. He reached it, hand on the door handle. Mara tackled him from behind. They went down hard on the pavement, her injured shoulder screaming. Strand drove his elbow back into her ribs, forcing her to release. He scrambled for the car. Kincaid arrived with backup, weapons trained. Don't move. Strand froze, hands visible. You won't shoot me. Too many witnesses. Too much political fallout. Try me, Kincaid said. You're military. You follow rules of engagement. I'm an unarmed civilian administrator. Shooting me creates problems your career can't survive. He was right. Kincaid couldn't shoot without justification. And Strand hadn't drawn a weapon, hadn't made any overtly threatening moves beyond running. But Mara wasn't military anymore. She'd been discharged, reactivated under emergency protocols that gave her temporary authority, but not permanent oversight. She drew the sidearm she'd taken from the hostile at the rehabilitation facility, aimed at Strand's leg. I'm not military, she said. I'm just someone who's very tired of watching you destroy lives. She fired. The round hit Strand's thigh, dropping him instantly. He screamed, clutching the wound. Kincaid stared. What the hell did you just do? Stopped a fleeing suspect who posed ongoing threat to operational security. Mara lowered the weapon. Also, I don't have a career to protect, so shooting unarmed administrators doesn't really concern me. Military police moved in, securing Strand, applying medical treatment to his leg. He was still screaming, alternating between pain and fury. This won't stop anything. The operation continues without me. You've accomplished nothing. We've accomplished your arrest, Mara said. That's something. She turned away, left him to the military police and medical personnel. Her shoulder had started bleeding again, soaking through bandages. Vision was tunneling at the edges. Kincaid caught her as she stumbled. Medical, now. No arguments. No arguments, Mara agreed. The next 6 hours were a blur of surgery, antibiotics, debriefing sessions conducted while she was still half sedated. She gave her statement multiple times to multiple agencies, each one asking slight variations of the same questions. Yes, she'd shot Strand. Yes, it was necessary to prevent escape. Yes, she understood the legal implications. No, she didn't regret it. When the last debriefer left, Dr. Chen appeared. She'd been transported to Riverside along with other personnel from the destroyed rehabilitation facility. How are you feeling? Chen asked. Like I got shot, operated on, and interrogated for 6 consecutive hours. So, normal Tuesday for you? Mara smiled despite everything. Something like that. Chen sat in the chair beside the hospital bed. The patients wanted me to tell you something. All 47 of them. They wanted you to know that what you did, giving them a choice to fight, treating them like people instead of problems, it mattered. Some of them are doing better now than they've done in years. Because you reminded them they're still capable, still valuable. I just didn't stop them from defending themselves. You gave them permission to be strong when everyone else told them they were broken. That's more important than you realize. Chen paused. What happens now? With Strand, with the investigation? Strand's in custody. He's already talking, trying to make deals. Apparently there are 3 other administrators involved in the procurement fraud, military and civilian, all of them being detained as we speak. Mara shifted position, wincing as her shoulder protested. The Nexus Group contracts are being frozen, assets seized. The organization will probably survive in some form, but their operations against rehabilitation facilities are finished. And you? What happens to you? Mara didn't answer immediately. She'd been asking herself the same question since she'd watched Strand get loaded into an ambulance. What happened now? She couldn't go back to being a nurse. That life was gone, burned away in the fires at Coldwater and the rehabilitation facility. But she couldn't go back to special operations either. That life had broken her once already. I don't know, she admitted. For 2 years I tried to be invisible. Tried to disappear into a job where the hardest decision was which medication to administer. But that didn't work. The past caught up. And now I'm visible again. Too visible to hide. Maybe hiding isn't what you need. What do I need? Chen smiled. Purpose. Direction. A reason to use your skills for something besides survival. She pulled out a tablet, showed Mara a document. Major Kincaid is establishing a new task force. Protection and support for operators transitioning out of active service. People like the ones at the rehabilitation facilities. People who need someone who understands what they've been through. She wants me to join? She wants you to lead it, build it from the ground up, make sure operators get the support they need and the protection they deserve from people like Strand. Mara read through the document. Resources, authority, mission parameters that made sense. It wasn't invisibility. It wasn't hiding. It was something else entirely. It was choosing to be visible for the right reasons. I'll think about it, she said. Think quickly. Kincaid needs an answer by tomorrow. Chen left. Mara was alone with her thoughts, and the tablet showing a future she hadn't considered. Leading a task force, protecting people, using violence and skills not to destroy, but to defend. It felt right in a way nothing had felt right since Kandahar. Her phone buzzed. Message from an unknown number. Thank you. Renner. She smiled, typed back. For what? Believing I mattered enough to save. Most people didn't. You saved yourself, I just didn't get in the way. Still. Thank you. Mara set the phone down, closed her eyes. Tomorrow she'd give Kincaid her answer. Tomorrow she'd start building something that mattered. Tomorrow she'd step into visibility and purpose and all the complications that came with both. But tonight, she'd rest, because she'd earned it. The next morning, Major Kincaid arrived with coffee and official paperwork. You look better. I feel like I got run over by tactical teams multiple times. Close enough. Kincaid set the coffee on the bedside table. I need your answer. Yes. That's it? Just yes? No questions about command structure, resource allocation, operational parameters? I read the documents. They're comprehensive. You've thought this through. Mara sat up carefully. But I have conditions. Name them. First, full autonomy on personnel selection. I choose my team. No political appointments, no administrative overflow. People I trust or nobody. Agreed. Second, direct access to military and civilian databases. If we're protecting operators, I need to identify threats before they become active. That means monitoring channels the architect used and others we haven't discovered yet. That'll require high-level clearance. Can you get it? I can try. What else? Third, the operators we protect get real support, not just security, psychological care, medical treatment, job placement, whatever they need to actually heal, not warehousing broken people, actually helping them rebuild. Kincaid smiled. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Anything else? One more thing, Captain Renner. I want him on the team. He's got procurement expertise, he understands corruption patterns, and he's proven he can handle himself under pressure. He's still recovering from his injuries. So am I. Doesn't stop me from being useful. Fair point. Kincaid pulled out a pen, made notes. I'll make the offer. If he accepts, he's yours. When can you start? As soon as the shoulder heals enough for me to hold a weapon properly. 2 weeks? 1. Marat's. 1 week. The architect's operation is dismantled, but there are others. Other people running similar operations. Other threats we haven't identified. I'm not waiting 2 weeks while someone else gets targeted. Kincaid studied her, then nodded. 1 week, but you follow medical protocols. I don't need my task force commander collapsing from infection during the first mission. Deal. They shook hands. Kincaid left to begin processing paperwork. Mara was left alone again, staring out the window at morning sunlight reflecting off mountains in the distance. For 2 years, she'd hidden from this, from responsibility, from visibility, from the weight of making decisions that determined who lived and who died. She tried to be just a nurse, just background noise, just someone who didn't matter enough to be noticed. But hiding hadn't protected anyone. It had just delayed the inevitable moment when the past caught up and demanded accounting. Now she was choosing differently, choosing to matter, choosing to be visible, choosing to use everything she was, broken, dangerous, relentless, to protect people who needed protection. It wouldn't undo Kandahar, wouldn't bring back the 12 operators who died while she'd crouched behind cover and called for air support that arrived too late. But it might give their deaths meaning beyond failure. Might prove that survival wasn't just luck or cowardice, but an opportunity to make different choices with the life remaining. Her phone buzzed. Message from Morrison. Heard you're starting something new. If you need volunteers, count me in. She typed back, You sure? Could be dangerous. His response came immediately. Already dangerous. Might as well be dangerous for something that matters. Over the next hour, similar messages arrived. Patterson, Davis, Collins, Henderson, even some of the patients who'd been in the basement during the assault, all volunteering, all wanting to be part of something larger than their individual struggles. People who'd been dismissed as broken, useless liabilities. All of them choosing to fight again. Not because they had to, because they wanted to matter. Mara responded to each message personally, thanked them, told them she'd be in touch, built the foundation of something that didn't exist yet but was already taking shape. 3 days later, she was released from medical care with strict instructions about physical therapy and medication schedules. She ignored half the instructions immediately, started working with Kincaid on operational planning. They established headquarters at a secure facility outside Washington, D.C., recruited personnel, developed protocols, built networks with rehabilitation facilities, military commands, intelligence agencies. Captain Renner accepted the position, brought his procurement expertise and bitter understanding of how systems could be corrupted. He became the task force's financial investigator, tracking money flows and identifying fraud patterns before they escalated to assassination contracts. Morrison took charge of security training, teaching other recovering operators how to protect themselves without triggering psychological breaks. He understood trauma from the inside, knew how to push people towards strength without destroying their fragile stability. Dr. Chen joined as chief psychological officer, ensuring the task force didn't just protect bodies, but minds. She built support systems that actually worked because she'd lived through what the operators were experiencing. 6 weeks after the assault on the rehabilitation facility, the task force was operational, protecting 17 facilities across 4 countries, monitoring threat patterns, identifying potential attacks before they materialized. They stopped 3 attacks in the first month alone, prevented casualties, arrested conspirators, dismantled networks that had operated in shadows for years. And Mara ran it all from a command center that felt nothing like the quiet nursing station at Coldwater. No invisible work, no being dismissed, just clear authority, defined purpose, and the knowledge that she was using every terrible skill she'd learned to protect people who needed protection. 4 months after starting, she received a formal commendation from military command, recognition for her actions at Coldwater and the rehabilitation facility, public acknowledgement of what she'd accomplished. Major Kincaid presented the commendation in a ceremony attended by operators from facilities the task force protected, 47 people who'd survived because she'd chosen to fight instead of hide. When Kincaid finished the formal presentation, the operators stood, all of them, applauding not because protocol demanded it, but because they wanted to. Because she'd proven they mattered, by treating them like they mattered. Mara stood at the podium, looking out at faces that had been strangers 4 months ago and were colleagues now, partners, people who understood what it meant to survive impossibility and choose to keep fighting anyway. "I'm not good at speeches," she said. "Never have been. So I'll keep this short." She paused, gathering thoughts. "For 2 years, I tried to disappear. Tried to become someone forgettable, because I believed that being invisible was the same as being safe, that if I stopped mattering, I'd stop hurting. But I was wrong. Being invisible just meant being powerless, being unable to help when help was needed." She looked at Morrison, at Patterson, at the faces of people who'd volunteered to fight when fighting was the last thing they should have had to do. "You taught me something, all of you. You taught me that being broken doesn't mean being useless, that surviving trauma doesn't disqualify you from meaning something, that the strongest people are often the ones who've been shattered and chose to put themselves back together anyway." Her voice caught slightly. She pushed through. "So this commendation isn't just for me. It's for every person who refused to stay invisible when the world tried to make them disappear. For everyone who chose to fight when fighting seemed impossible. For everyone who survived and decided survival wasn't enough. They wanted to matter." She held up the commendation. "This belongs to all of us, because we did this together, and we're going to keep doing it. We're going to protect people who need protection, fight for people who can't fight for themselves, make sure no one else gets dismissed as just a nurse, just a patient, just someone who doesn't matter enough to save." The applause came again. Louder now. More than protocol. Genuine recognition from people who understood exactly what she meant because they'd lived it. After the ceremony, Dr. Chen found her outside. "That was quite a speech." "I meant every word." "I know, that's what made it powerful." Chen smiled. "You've come a long way from the woman who spent 6 months staring at my office ceiling, trying to convince herself she didn't deserve to be alive. I still don't know if I deserve it, but I know what I'm going to do with it. That's all anyone can ask." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the facility where broken people were learning to be whole again, where trauma became strength, where invisibility transformed into purpose. Mara's phone buzzed. Mission alert. Potential threat detected at a facility in Germany. Intelligence suggesting hostile reconnaissance. Timeline uncertain. She read the alert, felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came with knowing action was imminent. 2 years ago, that feeling had terrified her, reminded her of Kandahar, of failure, of being the person who survived when better people didn't. Now it just felt like work. Important work. Work that mattered. "I need to go," she said. Chen nodded. "Be careful." "Always am." "That's a lie, but I appreciate the sentiment." Mara smiled, headed toward the operations center where her team was already assembling. Renner at his financial tracking station, Morrison coordinating with facility security, Reeves planning tactical response options, people who'd been dismissed, written off, considered liabilities, people who'd become the best team Mara had ever led. She took her position at the command center, pulled up threat assessments, started building operational plans. Outside, darkness fell over the facility. But inside, lights burned bright. People worked with purpose, protected those who needed protection. And Mara Hale, formerly Whiskey 37, formerly just a nurse, formerly invisible, led them with the kind of quiet strength that came from surviving impossibility and choosing to make that survival mean something. She'd been dismissed, underestimated, written off as broken. But she'd proven them wrong, proven that strength didn't come from never breaking. It came from breaking and choosing to rebuild anyway, from using every terrible skill and painful memory to protect people who needed someone willing to fight when fighting seemed impossible. The mission alert updated, threat level elevated, timeline accelerated, immediate response required. Mara keyed her radio. "All stations, prepare for deployment. We have operators who need protection. Let's make sure they get it." Her team responded with immediate efficiency. Professional, dedicated, ready, just like her. She wasn't invisible anymore. And she'd never be just a nurse again. She was Mara Hale. Leader, protector, someone who'd been underestimated and had turned that underestimation into the biggest mistake her enemies ever made. And she was just getting started.